Meeting of the Metropolitan District Commission in December 5, 2022. Meeting call to order. Roll call. John?
DeBello.
Here.
John, how you doing?
Adel.
Here.
Avedisian.
Here.
Pisano.
Here.
Buell.
Here.
Bush.
Here.
Curry.
Here.
Desai.
Here.
Drake.
Here.
Gale.
Here.
Gardeau.
Here.
Gentile.
Here.
Healy.
Here.
Hoffman.
Here.
Hoheb. Holloway.
Here.
LaChance.
Here.
Lester.
Here.
Lewis.
Here.
Magnan.
Here.
Maniscalco. Mandyke.
Here.
Payne.
Here.
Patel.
Here.
Potowski. Salemi.
Here.
Taylor.
Still waiting for the day that Patelski's here.
Torres.
Here.
Vecino. Wolf. Carrier. We have a quorum.
Okay. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
United States of America, to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, approval of the minutes of the meeting of November the 2nd, 2022. Is there a motion?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Are there any additions or deletions? Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Public comments relative to agenda items.
Hello, Judy Allen, West Hartford. Good evening. I submitted written comments, so I won't go through that all, but I am going to be a repeat for some of you who were at the 4 o'clock meeting. As you consider water and sewer rates for 2023, I must again call your attention to the discounts for large volume water users. You all know only one customer can make use of these discounts. No other customer is even close. You've been told this is an economic development rate. But you know a discount rate with no end makes no sense after a new business is established. While there's nothing preventing you from reducing the amount of the discount, in the past 2 years, there's been no discussion that a reduction over time was being considered. This rate has failed to accomplish its goal. It has not attracted any new industry. It has not resulted in your only large volume customer that qualifies from buying extra huge amounts of water. And you have heard me say this numerous times, it's not new. The action you should take is quite clear. What is proposed for next year is a rate for large volume users that is 75 cents less than the rest of us pay. Take one baby step toward making this a true economic development rate. Reduce that rate by just 1 nickel. This customer is here, established, they aren't moving out, they don't need a discount to make a profit, just a bigger profit. Ask the residents of Bloomfield how they feel about the large volume of heavy trucks going in and out 24/7, eating up their roads, causing extra pollutants and noise for those living close by. Nothing is ever 100% wonderful. Things don't always work out exactly as planned. There are always unintended consequences, but you can respond to them. MDC is abundantly fortunate to have plentiful water. other parts of our state are in dire need. Please set an example of being good stewards of the state's water and don't give it away while others struggle. Thank you.
Further public comment? Further public comment? Public comment is closed. This is a very long agenda this evening, and I'm going to ask that we move two things around so we can move this forward. I think we should take the budget up first. So I would ask, if there's no objection, that we take item 7 and leave A, and then move B portion of that to 12B, which would be right after the budget. Is there any other changes, John, that we're going to make? That was it. Is there objection?
Mr. Chairman, will you please adjust your speaker?
I'm sorry, can you hear me now? Commissioner? Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, that's good. Without objection, we will make those changes to the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, would it be 12I, right? 12I.
No, you'd be, because there's A in there.
Yeah.
There's a 12A, isn't there?
Yeah, but it's A, B, C, D, E, F. So it goes to H, and so it'd be 12I, correct?
Yeah, I think
I. It would be
F.
12I, I'm sorry.
No
It
problem.
would be I. You're right.
Yeah.
Because we have to take those up individually, right, John?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's fine. That's a report from the chairman. 12, number 7, report from report A, CHRO Affirmative Action Plan. Scott, is that going to be you? But it's going to be Rita, isn't it?
Yes, Rita. Thank you, Scott Jellison. Rita Kelly, who's here tonight, she is our affirmative action officer. And as I reported to you last week, we have another approved affirmative action plan for the MDC, and Rita has been spearheading this effort since 2012 on our behalf. So, Rita, go ahead.
All right, it's good to be here this evening. What I wanted to do was to give you an update on on the MDC Affirmative Action Plan. What I was going to do is provide some highlights of the plan, and also I wanted to talk about our meeting with CHRO. It was a very good meeting that we had with them, with the Commission on Human Rights and Opportunities concerning our efforts as it relates to affirmative action, as well as equal employment opportunity. And then I wanted to talk about another important area around the affirmative action program, which would be our MDC affirmative action complaint process. So you all have a copy of my handout. Let's see if I can do this. Okay, help. I'm trying to move the slide. Okay. I need help. Which one? That one. Okay. Nope. Okay, so as we all know, MDC is required to submit an affirmative action plan on an annual basis to the Commission on Human Rights and Opportunities for its review and recommendation of our program. We've been doing affirmative action programs since 2011, and I'm pleased to say in the 12-year span, as Scott previously said, we've received approvals for each year. The last meeting of the CHRO was November 2022, and that's when we had our most recent approval. And what I wanted to do, because a lot of times people don't understand or don't completely understand what an affirmative action program is. And basically, MDC's affirmative action plan includes these objectives and areas. It includes policies and procedures to ensure that employees are not discriminated against in the terms and conditions of employment based on a protected class. And it also provides a protection that if they feel that they've been discriminated against, they can file a discrimination complaint under the affirmative action plan. It establishes goals for attracting diverse applicants and developing applicant pools that reflect the region we serve. Now, everybody in their handouts got a copy of the workforce, MDC's workforce by occupational category, race and gender. And so our goal in terms of our workforce is to grow a workforce that reflects our labor market areas and the greater Hartford region that we serve. Also, as part of an affirmative action program, we identify barriers to equal opportunity and identify strategies for resolution. The last item I have there is we establish hiring promotion goals to address any identified underutilization of a race, sex group within our workforce based on the labor market. So our goals are based on comparing our workforce to the availability of people in certain occupations in the area where we operate. Now, one of the biggest misconceptions about affirmative action is that affirmative action is a program of preference, and affirmative action, as it's defined, within the state of Connecticut, it's not a program of preference. To provide preference on the basis of somebody's race or gender is against the law. But affirmative action, its goal is through recruitment, is to develop diverse pools of qualified candidates that reflect the geographic region that we serve. So the biggest aspect and element of affirmative action would be to make sure that we're reaching out to people and offering them jobs within the district and ensuring that people are aware of opportunities within the district. Now, EEO, which is Equal Employment Opportunity, is the goal of affirmative action. And the goal of EEO is to ensure that employment selections are based on valid qualifications which determine most qualified candidate. So in essence, our affirmative action plan looks at our recruitment, interview, and selection process to make sure that it's fair, to make sure that we've done everything we can to diversify our applicant pool, and then when we do establish an applicant pool, make sure that people are evaluated and assessed fairly and with set standards that are used across the board. Now, based on the CHRO review of our written plan and review of efforts to achieve the objective of the plan over the 2021-2022 reporting period, the plan was approved. And as part of that approval process, we met with the CHRO commissioners in November to discuss our program and to go over our efforts during the course of the reporting year. Now, our meeting with CHRO, I felt, was very constructive. Attending the meeting was Scott, Jamie Harlow, as well as myself, and it gave us an opportunity to talk about our efforts to reach out in terms of developing diverse applicant pools and attracting a diverse workforce to the district. So basically, what was discussed at the meeting was outreach initiatives targeted towards attracting and growing a diverse, qualified applicant pool. But also, this meeting gave us an opportunity to talk about some of the problem areas that we were encountering in fulfilling our affirmative action goals. One of the difficulties that we're encountering and is the fact that for a lot of the positions we're hiring, such as utility maintainer 1, they require certifications such as a CDL. Currently, nationwide, there's a shortage of people in this occupation. And so we had an opportunity to talk with CHRO about increasing our recruitment and outreach to actually attract people to these professions. And so we talked with CHRO about efforts to build interest in technical and skilled craft trades through programs such as the Learn and Earn program, the College Intern program, and partnerships with Hartford High School. Also, we talked about other recruitment efforts we could make in terms of developing partnerships to find out, if there's, certain areas and sectors that we could look to increase the pool of diverse candidates with CDLs and other technical skills that we're hiring for. We also had an opportunity to talk with CHRO about planned collaboration with technical schools and community colleges to connect the necessary education and guidance to future applicants wishing to attain the skills needed to qualify for positions at the district. So in essence, what we're finding is for a lot of the positions that we have goals for, affirmative action goals for, we don't see the diversity in the applicant pools. So we really feel that there's a need to increase our recruitment and actually not only recruit, but also work in partnerships to develop the pool of candidates in these areas, in these technical and skilled craft areas. Now, one of the critical elements of the affirmative action plan is this is discrimination internal complaint process. So I talked about recruitment and hiring and outreach, but also in terms of MDC, we have a responsibility to ensure that people are treated fairly, and also that people are not discriminated against in the terms and conditions of employment. So we do have a discrimination internal complaint process. Part of my role is that when employees have complaints, they can come to me, and I work with employees. When they come to me with issues, I discuss with them what their options are. And a lot of my work with employees around complaints involves assessment of complaints to determine if it falls under the affirmative action process and is based on a protected class. Basically, our internal process deals with complaints of discrimination. This is an opportunity for me to assess complaints with employees, and sometimes they're referred to the union, sometimes they're referred to HR, but there is an effort to make sure that even if it doesn't fall underneath the affirmative action discrimination complaint process, that employees are aware of their options and what they can do if they have concerns and complaints. Now, a critical part of the complaint process is an investigative plan. So when somebody comes to me with a complaint, it's more than just talking to them and listening to them. It's important, and it's required as part of our affirmative action process, which has been approved by CHRO, that when we feel that there has been a breach, that there is reason to believe that somebody might have been discriminated against within the district, that we develop an investigative plan. And this plan would include the gathering of evidence, witnesses, interviews, and review of documents. So it's more than just listening to, it's really a case of looking at all sides. This is a very prescribed process, and it's prescribed by CHRO to ensure that our complaint process is fair and objective. And not only does it protect people who come with complaints, but also it protects people who have complaints filed against them, and to ensure that it is a fair and credible process that has integrity to it. And one of the key, principles of our complaint process is maintaining confidentiality to the extent reasonably possible. So if somebody comes to me, I cannot openly talk about the complaint. I must keep it as confidential as possible. When I talk to witnesses, I try to keep it as confidential as possible. So so sometimes on the face of it, it doesn't look like a lot is being done. However, there is an investigative plan, there is gathering of evidence and witnesses, and there's a lot of effort that goes into making a decision as to whether or not there's sufficient evidence to substantiate a violation of our policy. Now, within our MDC discrimination complaint process, it's important that there be objectivity until there's a need for objectivity until complaint investigation is completed and a finding is made. So basically, when somebody comes to me, I can't take one person's side over the other. I have to look at both individuals and treat both the complainant and the respondent objectively and not take a side. And I also have to acknowledge the right of respondents to respond to allegations against them. Because obviously, that's part of fairness. When people are accused of something, they have a right to know what they're accused of, and they have a right to know, and they have a right to defend themselves. So when a investigation is completed, the outcome of the investigation as to whether or not discrimination occurred is based on whether there is a finding of substantial evidence to support allegations. So in order to go forward with any sort of discipline against a respondent, there has to be substantial evidence to support allegations. Now, a lot of times, there might be indicators that discrimination has occurred, but it has to be more than an indicator. There has to be evidence that it occurred. And sometimes people might think that discrimination happened, but this is the way the process works, and it works in this way to ensure fairness. There has to be substantial evidence to support allegations. So, as I said before, our discrimination complaint process is a very important part of our affirmative action plan, especially as it relates to ensuring that there is fairness in a workforce free of discriminatory practices. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita.
Are there any questions? Thank you, Rita. Thank you very much. That's it, right? Yeah. Item 8, report from the district council.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris Stone, District Council, just a few updates, and certainly I'll answer any questions anyone might have. First of all, the Marriott Sewer Assessment Appeal, as you know from the last meeting, we were successful at the appellate level in overturning the trial court's decision. That appeal, that decision from the appellate court has not been appealed, so the lien that we have on the property stands, and that case has been concluded. On the landfill cases, we have, as you know, 3 cases, 2 of which remain pending in the State Claims Commissioner's office. The third case, which happens to be the first case we brought, we received permission from the State's Claim Commissioner to bring suit against the state. There was some health issues with our council that have been resolved, fortunately, and that case will be filed on Wednesday of this week. On the tunnel claim, this is the KOJV, which is our tunnel contractor, suit against the MDC and our cross suit against them. As you know, they had filed in federal court. We filed 2 motions to dismiss that claim, one for what's referred to as forum nonconvenience. They brought it in the wrong place. The other is they haven't followed the provisions of the contract in terms of negotiating and resolving the claims by going to the DRB. Those 2 motions are pending in federal court, and on the state court level, we have filed our claim against them to reinstate the DRB process. And again, that's in state court. The return date, or the date by which they had to file an appearance, is tomorrow. So it was filed approximately 30 days ago, and we're waiting for them to file an appearance on that. And finally, in an item that occurs later on in your agenda, or relates to an item later on your agenda, is the Colebrook matter with the Army Corps of Engineers. As you know, we have a hearing next January 5th and 6th, and we also have some filings that have to be made by December 16th, which we're working on in our office, and certainly will be prepared for that. The resolution that you have before you is a resolution of a stated intent of this board not to pursue any land sales as a result of, or should we be able to extract ourselves from the Army Corps of Engineers contract. So I'll get into that in more detail when the agenda item comes up. but it's really a statement of what our present and, quite frankly, future intent is in terms of our watershed lands. And with that, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? I just have a question. Has there been any more progress on being able to meet on the merits of the issue?
There's, if you're referring to the tunnel claim, there's a, yep, there's a technical meeting in furtherance of an intent to settle that's scheduled for December 15th of this year, so that's back on track.
Okay.
Notwithstanding the lawsuits that have been filed, there's still constructive negotiations going
When do
forward.
they show up?
They'll show up.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Last time, wasn't there, that was the
Well, there
problem?
were issues that came up last time, which is unrelated to the litigation, but this has been scheduled, mutually scheduled, so absent some extraordinary event, both parties will be in attendance.
Thank you. No further, Dominic?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the
Sorry,
district,
Commissioner Payne.
through you to the district council. The Marriott case, is that similar to the 777 case, which was a discrepancy on conversion of residential, commercial and residential, or not?
No, the Marriott case had started as, that was a vacant piece of land on, I think it's Columbus Boulevard down, is that the Columbus
Yeah,
Boulevard?
Columbus
Bill?
Boulevard.
That was a vacant piece of land. That wasn't an intensification of an existing use. It was it's a different type of case.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further questions?
Can you improve your
Sure,
Microphones,
Commissioner Patel? Go ahead. Commissioner?
Yes, will you please ask everybody to speak in the microphone? I
Yes.
cannot hear clearly.
Yeah, for the purpose of people that are online, if we can speak as directly as possible into the microphone, it benefits those people that are listening. Okay, item, let's see, we're going to 9. Board of Finance consideration and potential action regarding A, 2022 operating budget transfer. Recommended action is receive the report and adopt a resolution. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Been moved and seconded. Okay, how are we going to handle it?
I don't know, how do you want?
I would think we're going to have,
That's next. Yeah, that's next one. That's B.
Oh,
This is just
sorry,
A.
sorry.
Oh, right, yeah, this is just A. Operating
this
budget
is
transfers.
A.
General transfers.
Recommended action, receive the report and adopt a resolution. Is there discussion? This is we're now into the budget.
This is the 2022.
22 budget.
Budget.
These are transfers from the 22 budget, yeah. Discussion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? B, additional to the same 2022 budget would be a $10,000 to the Metro Hartford Alliance for 2022 budget year. Is there anybody here from the?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see Jim. Jim, right.
Good evening. Thank you, Commissioner DeBella.
Would you identify?
David Griggs, President, CEO of the Metro Hartford Alliance. Excuse me, Chairman DeBella.
If I might, this is John Myrtle. This was at the Board of Finance on November 9th. Metro Hartford Alliance early in 2022 had requested an additional $10,000 as part of the MDC's dues, and at Board of Finance, the commissioners requested that somebody from Metro Hartford Alliance be present to, I guess, explain the request, and so that's the purpose of this agenda
David's
item.
the Chief Executive Officer.
Yep, thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening to answer any questions you may have regarding the Metro Hartford Alliance or the request for the additional $10,000 that we made to each of our leadership and executive level investors, of which MDC is a leadership investor, and thank you very much for your continued support for the work we do on that level.
David, could you give us just a little bit on what the shortfall was
Sure.
in '22?
So,
and what
yeah, so
caused the
as we
problem?
came out of 2021 and COVID, we found ourselves at a significant shortfall with regard to our financing due to our inability to host in-person events, anything that typically would generate revenue for the organization. So moving into 2022, we asked our leadership investors to help us make up that difference so that we could continue to move forward with the work that we're doing.
Did Aetna have anything to do with that? Wasn't the Aetna issue in the
Yes.
merger?
Yes, so we counted Aetna as one of our leadership investors at a very high level right up until 2020 when they pulled out, which caused a considerable shortfall, not only for us, but other nonprofits around the region.
That was after the merger.
Correct.
Now it's CVS, I guess, is the owner. Are there any questions? Commissioner
Thank you, Mr.
Gray?
Chairman. Could you tell us exactly what you're charged with in terms of servicing Hartford and the greater Hartford area?
Sure. So the Metro Hartford Alliance is made up of the Alliance essentially as an umbrella organization, but we have the insurance financial services work. We have the Hartford Chamber of Commerce that we kicked off kind of new. We consider it a 229-year-old startup. We reinvigorated it in 2020 and gave it a new charge to help small business in the city of Hartford. We also have the Connecticut Health Council and HYPE, the Hartford Young Professionals and Entrepreneurs, an attempt to help us retain the talent that our companies work so hard to bring to the Hartford region. Essentially what we're designed to do is we're an economic development organization designed to help bring new businesses into our region, retain the existing ones that we've got, as well as be the primary marketing organization for our city and region to promote living and working here in Hartford.
Okay, and could you tell us how
The
many
Hartford
staff
region.
members you have?
We currently have 14 staff members.
Okay, and how many staff members did you have pre-COVID?
Pre-COVID, we had 21.
Thank you.
John, Commissioner Avedisian?
Quick, oops. There we go. Quick question. What was the total shortfall that you had? And number two, that $10,000 is on top of what that we already put in the budget?
110,000.
110.
So the total shortfall for fiscal year '22 was right around 130,000.
Thank you.
Further questions? Commissioner Gatto?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Gardo here. So the MDC is a leadership investors in I got to speak into this.
That's
so I
fine,
can't
thank
see.
you.
So how many other leadership investors are there, and did they participate with this call for extra funding?
Yeah, thank you. We have 13 executive and leadership level investors, and yes, we had approximately 80% participate.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Further questions? Further questions? I keep forgetting. Commissioner Hoffman?
Yes, Commissioner Hoffman, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to introduce an amendment to passage of this item, if that's correctly in order.
Amendments in order, go ahead.
If I may,
But
Mr.
not
Chairman.
here.
There's no motion
Motion before
before
us.
you. So
Then we-
any motion to either pay the 10,000 or not pay the 10,000 would need to be made from the floor. So
Yeah.
you have
It's on
first crack
it's
at it.
on the agenda. It isn't, I haven't called for a motion. We wanted to have the
I'll wait.
merits of what we're talking about discussed and questioned, and then a decision would be a motion. Once the main motion is proposed, the amendment's in order.
Thank you.
Further questions? Commissioner Curry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you tell us how many of your leadership group are other than private businesses, such as a public, a municipality, a regional body?
Yes. Of the 13, two. I'm rolling through them in my head. Two others, yes.
That are not privately owned?
Correct.
Thank you.
Further questions? David, thank you.
Thank you.
What's that?
No, I just.
Thank you, David. Okay. Okay, there's a motion, the action is, recommended action is to receive the report and adopt the resolution. Is there a motion to adopt?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, this is John Myrtle again. There's no resolution or motion that's been drafted, because I didn't know which way
Okay,
somebody would need to make.
someone's going to have to make that motion, and John can put it into the proper form if there's a question. Is there a motion to add the additional $10,000? Andy?
I'll make the motion.
Second? Okay, motion to amend?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Hoffman. What I'd like to address is, through this amendment, is the ad hoc nature of requests that we get from time to time. Sometimes these requests lead to a lot of prolonged discussions that go on sometimes in multiple years. And so we have to be very careful, because any request that comes into us will have to directly impact our customers, because it's their money that we're determining is in fact a good idea. And I'm not arguing the idea at this point. So what I'd like to propose is the following: that any future requests for funding, in addition to the funding provided in an adopted annual budget, must be submitted in writing to the Board of Finance, and thereafter the District Board for consideration.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Discussion? It's reasonable.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Kerr?
Commissioner Curry here. I'm not quite sure how to tack that amendment on to the motion to approve or to not approve. Maybe it's a standalone, but it's tough to speak out against an amendment when, for me, I would speak out against the main motion. So I don't think the amendment is germane to the motion.
Chris, what's your?
Yeah, thank you. Chris Stone, District Council. To the extent it refers to any future requests, I assume you're referring, Commissioner Hoffman, to future requests of the Metro Hartford Alliance?
Yes, in this specific case.
Then I would submit that it's germane to the underlying motion.
Okay. Again, let's just understand, this is an amendment to a request for the $10,000, and what your amendment is process in any future amendment. Okay, fine. I agree. I think we can deal with that issue. Ultimately, it would be the Board of Finance it would have to go to anyway for the approval of anything in the future.
Yes, and
And you're talking about in an instance where it's introduced to the board without going to the Board of Finance.
correct.
Okay. Further
Shouldn't these be two separate items, like Commissioner Curry said? I mean, what if you want to vote no on the first one, but you want to do what Mr. Hoffman said?
Well, then, if you voted no against the main motion.
What?
If you voted no, if you're for the amendment, and vote for the,
I thought we were going to put them together. Didn't you just say they were going to be tied
Well,
together?
this is an amendment.
It's an amendment to add it into the main motion.
So we can vote twice then?
Well, you'd have to vote twice to make an amendment to the main motion would be the first amendment. They would be consolidated, and then you would vote on the consolidated main motion.
I'm good.
Excuse me.
Commissioner Curry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would speak out against the amendment. I think it's, it's almost a reversal of what I believe is the intent of the amendment is, in that you're opening and allowing the camel's head under the tent, if you will, to set a process for future years where any of those organizations that MDC contributes to now believes that they can send a letter in and request additional revenue, in this case, from the current year's budget. So I would speak out against the amendment.
Chris?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris Stone, and I'm not going to debate whether it's right or wrong to adopt the amendment or the underlying resolution. That's not my charge. But I will suggest that my understanding of the purpose of the amendment is to make sure that any future requests, not to encourage them, but to make sure if they're made, and anyone can make them, that they're made in writing and that they go through the proper process prior to reaching this body. If I'm wrong, Commissioner Hoffman, correct me, but.
It's based on my experience on the Finance Committee, we have, in fact, had requests come in, be discussed, and not taken action on agreeing to those requests. My point is, this request did not come to the Finance Committee, and I think it should, in fact, have gone to the Finance Committee for consideration and possibly approval, in which case the Finance Committee would then suggest to the board that this is, in fact, a good contribution that we can make. So it just avoids a lot of discussion.
I think this was the issue that was raised at the Board of Finance, and it was requested at the Board of Finance, was it not, Scott, that we bring Metro Hartford Alliance in to explain the $10,000 issue? Not to not do that would not have been bring it to everybody's attention, because the Board of Finance was reporting the document to the board. So it was, Scott, go ahead, buddy.
Perhaps, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Salami, perhaps District Council can help clear this up, because I thought that when it came before the Board of Finance, that this request is related to the 2022 budget, not to the 2023 budget. And I don't think that I'm not sure that the Board of Finance, procedurally, that it has to go to the Board of Finance. I thought what we heard at that meeting was that it's the district board that has to actually approve. Is it a transfer? Is that what's going to happen? Is it transfer of funds if we approve it, or? I'm not sure where the funds are going to come from, but it's a budget that the Board of Finance has already passed. It's the 2022 budget, not the new budget. Am I correct about that?
That's correct, but you're amending that existing budget to add.
This in.
It's additional monies beyond what you approved in December of 2021, what the Board of Finance approved in 2021, and what this board approved in 2021. So that's why we felt it should go to the Board of Finance initially, and then to the district board. Bob, you were asked a question by Scott.
I'm so,
Is this new money, or is this a transfer, or?
Well, it's Scott, yeah.
go ahead, Scott. You made the
I
recommendation.
apologize. And I've said this at the board level before, as we were going through this COVID-related issue, and Metro Hartford came to us, the chairman and I, and said, we've got this problem, $130,000 bust in our budget. We're asking our participating companies to see if they could give us an additional $10,000. And what we said to them at that point was, we don't know. We will, depending on what happens at the end of the year, we'll bring it to the board. And I did raise it at the Board of Finance to make people aware, but it was not an agenda item. It was not, there was no resolution. And I know Commissioner Hoffman was concerned that it should have been. And so through the discussion at the Board of Finance, I think twice, the recommendation was to send it to the full district board. And as you know, the board approves the budget. Within the budget, there was $110,000 allocated specific for the Hartford Metro Alliance. So I don't have the authority to pay another $10,000 without approval from the board.
Right.
So that's why we're here. I have recommended that we support them, and that's why it's on the agenda.
Commissioner.
Yes, Commissioner Torres here. I supported the amendment, not on the merits of receiving the money, but in terms of the process of trying to keep things always organized and consistent. Board of Finance goes through a process of determining what that budget would look like. And I think that anything that has to do with any particular changes in the budget for any year, whether it was passed or going forward, should have a recommendation from the board, because they'll look at the budget, they'll figure out if the money's, first of all, if they think it's a good thing to do, where the money's going to come from, and then make a recommendation as to whether or not we can afford to do this. So I have a great deal of confidence in the work that the finance board does in determining how the dollars of the MDC should be spent. I also am concerned about doing what we're doing today, because then we open it up to anybody coming in and saying, well, I can circumvent the finance board and come to the board, and ask for additional dollars, at any given point in time, because for whatever reason, and there may be very valid reasons, but we then circumvent the process, that we're trying to establish, which is consistency, in an organized manner to make these decisions that then come to the full board. So we don't have to get into a big discussion here, nickel and diming budgets, when all this work should be done, where it has a place. As each committee has its own responsibilities, and workload to help us make those final decisions after we get, consultation from those committees. So that's the way I see it. And I think that down the road, if needed, we may need to make sure that we codify in some form or fashion that anything that comes into from anywhere, should follow this process, so that we don't leave it open, and make it arbitrary, which is not a good thing.
I think that's what the amendment is doing, is it?
For this particular
For this
situation. But I'm saying that down the road, I think we need to consider how we deal with this, and maybe a resolution comes forth from the Finance Committee making that recommendation that anything that comes in, should have that overview and
Commissioner.
due diligence on the part of the Finance Committee to make a good, solid recommendation that we can then vote on.
Right. And I think that it was an oversight in terms of the consideration, and the problem was the recommendation was going to go to the board anyway. In other words, we were recommending the whole budget, and it was a timing issue to get the Metro Hartford Alliance here to discuss what it actually was. And that's basically how we ended up in a situation on $10,000 here. Further discussion on the amendment? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? On the main motion, discussion. If not, Commissioner Curry.
I would just briefly state that we're a regional authority, we're not a private entity. We don't answer to business partners, we don't answer to stockholders. We answer to 8-member towns, and then with the customers, and we set the ad valorem and the water and sewer rates. And I'd like to think that we're a pretty conservative group in terms of finding a budget, and I just think this sets a very bad precedent, and I'm not in favor of it. Even though I understand that there may be a need, because of COVID, there's a need for everyone out there.
Further discussion? Commissioner Godo?
Yes, Commissioner Gardo here. The next year's budget starts in 25 days or whatever. Could we just kick the can and put this in next year's budget and be done with this right now? Because, add $10,000 to that. Or is it needed by the Metro Hartford Alliance today?
Chief Executive.
Yes, thank you. This is Scott Chelsea. We have the same problem, Commissioner. So the budgeted amount for 2023 is $110,000, so I don't have the authority to pay $120. So you have the same problem for 2023 as you have for 2022. The problem is not that we don't have the money, we have the $10,000, but I don't have the authority as a CEO from the board to give the Hartford Metro Alliance $120,000. So that's the problem. And so if we kick this down, we still have to amend 2023 budget.
Right, that might be easier than, if I can, Mr. Chairman, that might be easier than what we're going through right now.
You mean do this at a future meeting?
No, tonight for the, amend the 2023 budget tonight in 10 minutes or 20 minutes from now.
Isn't that what we'll end up doing?
You could do that.
No, because it's,
I
can't.
If you want to do it that way, that's fine.
If in 30 seconds, we just do it right now.
Well, we've already spent.
Yeah.
The vote on
We've got
the motion as amended.
as
for
amended.
2022.
Right. Further discussion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
No.
Opposed?
No.
Okay. Item,
Chairman DeVoe, I abstain from the vote, please. I abstain from the vote. I'm abstaining from the vote. Thank you.
do you want to state the purpose? You're abstaining from the vote. Okay,
Correct.
no problem. You're abstaining.
And
Generally, you're supposed to.
if I might, Mr. Chairman, this is John Myrtle. I just need to record the votes for the minutes. I had Commissioner Curry, Gardeau, and Avedisian as noes. Was there one more? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Next item is, where are we now? Item 10, Water Bureau consideration and potential action regarding A, the 2023 district water rates. Proposed, there's an amendment here. John, why don't you articulate the amendment?
Someone to move the motion.
Is there a motion to adopt?
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there a motion to amend?
This is John Myrtle, if I might. In your materials, there's a proposed amendment to the water rate that's contained in Water Ordinance W1F. It's the non-member town capital improvement surcharge. And the reason for this amendment is that rate varies by town based on the projects that occur in the town, and then also by meter size. Immediately prior to the rates being published for the public hearing, a 6-inch meter was installed in Glastonbury, which was the first 6-inch meter in that town. So there was no prior 6-inch rate in Glastonbury. So the proposed amendment is to incorporate a 6-inch rate, which also lowers the other rates in that town.
Are there questions on the amendment?
Move the amendment.
Second.
It's, good, okay. Moved and seconded by Commissioner Payne. Okay. Is there discussion? If not, all those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. On the main motion, is there discussion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item B, 2023 water rate, water assessment rate and miscellaneous water charges. Is there a motion to adopt?
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there a motion to amend? John?
Yeah, this is John Myrtle. There's a proposed amendment that was in your materials. This is correcting a typographical error. The rate for the hydrant relocation, the existing rate is a $15,000 deposit, and then take the actual cost plus overhead, apply it against that deposit. That rate was just excluded from the rate sheet, so this amendment is to keep the 2023 rate the same as the 2022 rate, just getting it back into the approved rates.
Is there any discussion on the amendment? All those in favor, please.
We need somebody to move that amendment.
Move the amendment.
Sorry. Is there a motion to move the amendment?
Move the amendment, Mr. Chairman.
And it's been seconded. Discussion? If not, all those in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there discussion on the main motion? If not, all those in favor of the motion amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 11. Bureau of Public Works, consideration and potential action regarding the 2023 district sewer user charge rates and other sewer charges. Is there a motion to adopt? It's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? If not, all those, I'm sorry, discussion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, item 12, Board of Finance consideration and potential action regarding the 2023 capital improvement budget and funding proposed funding. Is there a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Been moved and seconded. Is there a motion to amend? John?
This is John Myrtle. This amendment was added to your materials in open text today, so I'll explain in detail. The CIP resolution is quite long. It's mostly cleaning up the language. The first proposed amendment is within it's on page 11A-3. It's within resolution number 1. There was a reference to water mains. This is a sewer project, so it's replacing water main with sewer. Next amendment is on resolution number 4. It's on page 11A-6. Again, a reference to water was stricken and replaced with sewer. On page 11A-18, resolution number 26. Again, a reference to water was replaced with sewer in section 1.
11 or 12?
These are all technical amendments?
12A, John?
Should be 12A. Thank you.
Reference to the last two are to section 12 on your agenda, page 12. Sorry, John.
No, thank you. On page 12A-20, resolution number 29, the bonding resolution title was cleaned up, striking elimination and inserting Newington, and then removing from the sanitary sewer system and inserting project. And the last one is on page 12A-22, resolution number 31, inserting after the Hartford Pollution Control Facility sewer shed, inserting N-30, which is a CSO outfall. And in section 1 of the resolution, it's adding after the Hartford Water Pollution Control Facility sewer shed, as required for consent order compliance at CSO N-30.
Basically, all technical amendments to the language in the motion. Okay, is there discussion on the amendment? If not, all those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? To the main motion, Is there discussion on the main motion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item A passes. Item B, 2023 budget expenditures. Recommended action, receive the report and adopt a resolution. Is there a motion? Moved and seconded. Discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item C, recommended action, receive the report and adopt the resolution and 2023 budget revenues. Is there a motion to adopt? It's been
Second.
moved and seconded. Is there discussion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? It's adopted. Item D, recommended action, receive the report and adopt the resolution, 2023 hydroelectric expenditures and revenues. Is there a motion to adopt?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Adopted. Item E, 2023 ad valorem tax on member municipalities. Recommended action is to receive the report and adopt the resolution. Is there a motion? It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. No, without discussion, all those in favor, please designate by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? It passes. Item F, setting of District 2023 referendum threshold. The recommended action is to receive the report and adopt the resolution. Is there a motion to adopt? It's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion on item F? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Item G, deauthorization of the Clean Water Project established under the long-term CSO control plan. Recommended action is receive the report and adopt the resolution. Is there a motion? It's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item H, 2023 budget and approval process for commissioner travel to conference and seminars. Is there a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Okay, there's a proposed amendment. Could the clerk please read the amendment?
Yes, this is John Myrtle. This item was passed by the Board of Finance at its November 9th meeting. It was provided in your materials, and the proposed amendment is in your materials. It allocated or designated $25,000 within the district board budget for expenses related to commissioners' attendance at conferences or seminars. The proposed amendment makes the potential expenses broader than merely just attendance at conferences and seminars, and it's related to commissioner expenses related to district business.
There's also in those amendments, or is that, there's three amendments, isn't there?
Well, it's one full
One
amendment.
encompass, but there's also-
three additional resolution paragraphs. It includes the approval process where a commissioner seeking reimbursement fills out forms, and it's done in accordance with employee standards for travel, and the approval for these will be by the district board chairperson, the board vice chairperson, and the Board of Finance chairperson. They will review the proposed expenses of reimbursement collectively.
And they'll determine between the three, yes or no.
Yes.
Okay. Discussion on the amendments. If not, all those in favor of,
Somebody to move the amendment.
I'm sorry, move the main motion. Is there a motion to adopt?
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. Okay, on the motion to the proposed amendment, is there discussion? If not, all those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
As to the main motion, is there any discussion on the main motion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's it. Okay. That's the adoption, except for we have something in 14.
Correct, the ordinance
Okay.
revisions. Yeah.
And then that
That's
will
the,
be
that's
the
the bulk of
ordinance
the agenda.
piece of it.
or the
Okay.
budget.
Okay, that brings us to item 12I. That is the 2003 Barrington Wells Comprehensive Management Study of the Metropolitan District. There is an 86-page report that Scott's going to spend 15 minutes on. No, this is going to be, Scott will articulate this, what is in this report. It has been just circulated, I think, yesterday or?
Today.
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 So we're not asking for speed reading. Yes, Commissioner Kerr.
I just want to suggest to the members here that the 86 pages is great, but it's only an abbreviated document. But some of the questions you may have may be answered in chronological order. So allow Scott to finish the report before we ask any questions.
Yeah, I think what we're going to really end up doing tonight, because very few have gone through this, and that we're going to have a series. This will be referred to the PP&I committee, and there will be a series of meetings on each part of it so that everybody can spend time, go through, ask Scott questions, have staff there that can be supportive of what we have to if there's additional information. Why don't you articulate that? Scott, go ahead, you got the floor.
Just a quick question, Mr.
I'm
Chairman,
sorry.
if you don't mind.
Yep. Commissioner Payne.
Thank you. Why would it be referred to PP&I? Isn't there a better committee that, well, just curious.
Better?
That's where most of this, it's in the past has gone to PP&I.
Management study and PP&I?
Well, let's let them get into it. We can discuss the referral issue if there's a problem on it.
Thank you.
We're still going to have a document that we got to do something. Or not send it to a committee and just have that discussion done through staff. All those, Scott, go ahead. You have the floor.
Thank you. So, yes, as the chairman mentioned, Commissioner Taylor and the chairman had mentioned that there was a study done back in 2003, and we refer to as the BWG study. And the question was, what have we done, MDC, what have we done in terms of analyzing our management and our procedures and policies since 2003? So one in a lot of discussions that have occurred over the last couple of months, one of the discussions we had was, and I appreciate that, was let's give Scott, the CEO, and his staff the opportunity to present to the commission, and whether it's PPI, whether it's a full commission, we would definitely have independent special meetings. We're talking about 3- and 4-hour meetings, the full report is 132 pages, which I did not give you. The staff has put in at least 1,000 hours. I've spent the last 3 weeks giving you an 87-page report. Up on the slides are 57 of those 87 slides. And so we're really trying to give you an understanding and a context. The first question I want to make sure the commission understands is, well, there's this 2003 report out there, and why didn't you implement it, right? What happened to this 2003 report? And so I want to give you a little context as to what happened at the MDC chronologically that may or may not have impacted the ability to implement this, or maybe this study should never have been implemented, and it actually wasn't implemented. So we're going to give you a little context of that. I was really hoping to have about 2 hours tonight. Then the chairman asked to put it down to 45 minutes. then a half hour, now I got 10 minutes. And it's going to take me 10 minutes just to explain what I just said. So,
We started at 20 minutes.
right, but really, I'm going to really just, what I really want tonight is to really just give you an understanding of this 2003 report, and it was sitting on a shelf somewhere, and what happened, right? And really understanding what was going on at the district, and some of you may know, and some of you may not know, but what was going on in the district in terms of executive leadership really had a lot to do with this study. So with that, I just want to make sure that as Commissioner Curry, which he's a wonderful commissioner because he reads everything I give him, and he read the report today. We sent it out at 3 o'clock, and he read it. In order for me to present a summary, I cannot present the 21 recommendations that's in here. It doesn't have any flow. It doesn't explain. It just identifies 21 items that should be considered with no consideration of priorities or things that need to be integrated prior to, a how-to manual. So what I simply tried to do in this summary is to say, here's what happened at the MDC since 2003, and how do some of those recommendations, how were they incorporated or not, and why? I don't think I'll be able to get through it tonight, but I will try, and there's a few things I really want to be able to cover tonight. So with that, I can't see from the podium, so I need my readers, and I need to be able to stand here, and I hope everyone can hear me. So,
Point the clicker towards the computer.
thank you. Thank you.
Test it.
It's going to be
I'll have to get up.
You can sit.
No, that's okay.
can't see the.
I have to go over here. I haven't been over here in like 7 years. So I guess. You know what, you're gonna have to just.
John, tell me down this way.
Okay. Let me see if it works. Okay. And I'm gonna stand up because I can speak better.
What's the call?
And faster.
And it's faster, right? So, and I'm a righty, so I'm gonna stand over here. So I'm gonna really whiz through these slides because there's 57 of them here, and I really expected to have more time, but I know we got a huge agenda. So, hire a consultant or a contractor to do anything for anyone. The consultants only know what they're told, right? It's an interactive process. So I'm a consultant, I'm hired to do a scope, and I need to speak to the people at the MDC to understand what you do, how you do it, and really understand how can I recommend to fix something that may or may not be broke without really understanding and talking to people. So in the study that you have, and we sent it out a couple times, they had spoken in 2003 with 70, I'm sorry. They had spoken with 70 individuals. There was 649 employees at the time. So we don't know who they spoke to. We don't have any records of that. They spoke to commissioners, the executives, the managers, employees, totaling 7 people with about 100 meetings. But we have no understanding of the breakdown of who was spoken with. This is really important. This is probably the most important part of this study. As any study, the contract was signed in the spring of 2003. So as you know, when we do a project, there's years or at least a year of planning in terms of developing scope, in terms of identifying, what you need from the consultant, and then advertisement. So there's a lot of planning that goes into these types of documents. So the study was signed in the spring of 2003. There was a CAO, which is Chief Administrative Officer, that was brought in 2000, and a new COO, which was part of the recommendations and brought in 2003. The CEO prior to Mr. Rhodes left in 2000, so I would assume that the CEO in 2002 was aware and part of the planning of this study. And then the list of Bob Moore as the CAO and Dominic DeGangi. The important part of this was the information that was being generated came from these individuals. I mean, they were the leadership at the time. By 2004, the CEO had changed, had left. In 2005, we had a new CEO. And 2006, the COO left. So all of the individuals that were party to planning this study were gone before it even got off the ground. So when you ask your question, where was it? It was on a shelf somewhere because the people who created it were gone, right? So that's a really important component. There's a lot of, in my opinion, I'm lucky because I've been here since 2006, so I've seen a lot at the operation level, so I've understood these silos. They refer to them as compartmentalization. There was a lot of that, a lot of departments didn't interact with each other, and there was no business model and procedures that forced them to work together. And it's apparent to me, understanding what I know about the MDC, that the report has 21 recommendations. It didn't identify the root causes of problems. It just identified a problem. And the recommendation, in my opinion, was really, if we would have implemented it, would have made it much, much worse. For example, the recommendations were to basically, and what happened from 2000 to 2003, all of the engineers, a central engineering and planning department in upstairs on the third floor was divested into the departments. And the plan was to create even worse silos between wastewater, water, and even create a new silo, a new business model for increasing recreation, and forestry. So that was a challenge and a problem for me understanding what I know, that we were already getting consent orders and consent decrees in the late 90s. Why would you strip engineering with all of its resources and put it into the field? But that started before this report was written. It started in 2000. So again, it's an interactive process. The person you're talking to, the management that you're talking to at the time, that was their mentality that let's have self-sufficient departments, drinking water, wastewater, at the time solid waste, and recreation and forestry, and let's have a self-sufficient department with engineering, with maintenance. But you can imagine if you had to have maintenance for water, maintenance for sewer, engineers for both, you basically double the size of the MDC, right? So that was my biggest concern with the start of this study. In 2005, a new CEO comes in, and I've said in the report, every CEO, every board has its own mission. Some it gets dictated to you, and some, there's a policy that the board wants us to do X. Chuck came in 2005, and he was confronted with a multi-billion-dollar clean water project that the MDC and the report shows this. There was lots of references in the report, and we know them to be true, that in that time frame, the management did not want to spend money. They were doing everything in their power to not spend money, not increase debt service, not increase the water rate, but unfortunately the maintenance suffered. And that really was the catalyst to the Clean Water Project. And I think, and I've said here, probably the best thing that this board ever did, and I know the chairman was a big part of that, was to hire Chuck Sheehan to initiate this program. He brought me in, so again, the COO leaves service here in 2006, and I've worked with Chuck Sheehan for 20 years at the Department of Public Works, doing $2 billion of construction a year. So it was a great fit for me to come in and support Chuck in his efforts. You know, it's one of the Clean Water Project is the largest project in New England for a clean water project. I would suggest that it's something in our history that when people look back 100 years, they will be proud of this organization for doing what it did. There's a lot of cities in our communities across the state, across the country that aren't doing what we're doing. So it's, I'm just going to skip here because I want to just give you a flavor for what we did from 2005 to 2015. One of the reports says you must hire a CFO. Now, I've heard stories when I first got here in 2006, Lisa, and Milt Harris, right? It's an old retirement name, but there was a lot of turnover at the MDC in these critical roles. And so the MDC did, in fact, hire a CFO, John Zinzarella, in 2006, as well as hire myself. What I tried to do in the report is, this is exactly what came from the report. So I try to state the purpose of the recommendation. You will see me bouncing around because although this is one, it'll go to 6 and it'll go to 12 and it will jump around, but it's because of the chronology that's important. So I'm not going to state this, but as you can see, very important that you know, the goal was to empower the maintenance or the operational departments to be self-sufficient. And this is one that is so simple but very concerning. In the report, it talks about the fact that operational staff, which we have a lot of tonight, didn't feel like anyone at the MDC at headquarters is listening to them. And yet, the goal of the report says managers of water and water supply lines of business should be officially I can't believe it. Like, why would you create even a larger silo by having the people, I'm a working CEO, working COO, working CAO. Everyone here works. Having managers at headquarters when you're trying to run the largest wastewater utility and the largest drinking water utility in the state, up in headquarters, doesn't make any sense to me. So my charge, we're off and running with the Clean Water Project. We're, getting ready. Chuck is getting ready. They hire create a whole new PMU because we stripped all of our engineers out of engineering. And we're about to execute this Clean Water Project. The problem was operations was not ready for this. Now remember, in operations, we're working on fixing our own stuff. Every contractor and developer that wants to put in a new development, our staff has to do something, put in hydrants, tap water mains. We have a lot of our own work to do. And one of the challenges I was aware of, and Chuck was aware of, was that the Clean Water Project was going to double the amount of work that operations had to perform. But it wasn't ready for it. It was completely disorganized. The report doesn't even give operations any credibility. It's more of just a mega process, they call it, that would be, self-serving engineering and the other departments. So there was a lot of things that really, in the report, to me, again, I've had the experience of being here for a while, so I really understand operations and how these things impacted. But I just want to give you a few things to note. We had a dispatch center. And the dispatch center was simply 2 or 3 individuals, and it worked for the Department of Operations, which is really the sewer and water department. That's where they fix the water mains and the sewers in the streets. And all that group did was really call in crews. So if you had a water main break, you had to call in a crew. If you had a sewer main collapse, Tony would come in and fix the sewer. But you had 24/7, you had people that are there 24/7, but they weren't, their job was not to be first responders. So in 2006, we were not allowed, I say we because I reflect on in operations, we were not allowed to access SAP. So think about this. Mrs. Jones calls in the middle of the night and says, I got sewer in my basement. Our guys go out, they put an Excel spreadsheet together. Mrs. Jones had sewer in the basement. We don't have access to SAP or the customer service account, so we can't document it. Excel spreadsheet. Mrs. Jones calls up the next morning. Your guys were here last night at 2 in the morning, and they told me it's not my problem. It's an act of God. And our customer service reps had to say, Mrs. Jones, I don't know what you're talking about. Now, through the report, it talks about customer service. It talks about, the problems with customer service. That wasn't customer service's fault, right? That was leadership's fault. That was the lack of leadership and the lack of business processes that were not developed here at the MDC. I've got a little treat for everybody. Oops, sorry. I got a little treat for everybody because I love this kind of stuff. I put spacers right there because everybody see these copper pipes. They're in front of Dave. They're in front of you, and there's one over in front of Commissioner Hoffman. Does anybody know what that is? It's what we call a spacer. Now, think about how simple this is. Customer service doesn't know what it's doing. People call, they're frustrated, they don't know that our staff was there at 2 o'clock in the morning. We're not collecting revenue. It's all because of the spacer. And the spacer, this report doesn't even know spacers exist. And here's the problem. Contractors would come in and develop 50 homes, 20 homes, 30 homes. A lot of homes in Windsor and Glastonbury and other parts of the rural parts of the district. They'd go to the yard, they'd ask for spacers. What does the spacer do? It tells the plumber, here's the space that you need for our MDC meter. So we physically give that to the developer, the plumber. He puts it in, he pipes up to it. Now he knows he can bring a meter and put it right in, it will fit perfectly, right? Here's the problem. We didn't record it. We had no way of keeping track of spacers. So can you imagine the number of phone calls, the lack of revenue received, all of the things just because of a spacer? And that's my point for this report. Root causes were never addressed. What we did was start to address those root causes, not because of the report. I didn't even understand the report existed. But we did it out of necessity. So from 2006 to really 2015, we spent, or really 2010, we spent mega amounts of man hours and woman hours in operations, making us more efficient so that we could deal with what was coming at us, which was the Clean Water Project. This is just another example of what we did, right? We have gone from multitasking job descriptions, and we talk about this all throughout. We've talked about this a million times. How do we do more with less? Multitasking job descriptions. We would not be here today if it wasn't for multitasking job descriptions. This is a work order. So what is a work order? Somebody needs something fixed, right? replace a hydrant needs to be replaced, tap a water main, anything that the MDC operations would do, a work order is created. In 2000, there was about 4,000 work orders a year. In 2020, there was more than 10,000. That's what we saw back in 2000. We knew it was coming. And this is the staff level going down. We had 120 staff in operations, and now we have 89. But we've got the support of the unions, the multitasking job description. Our union leadership is actually, we're hiring more young people with the mentality and the qualifications to be promoted. And this is the result. We've seen less staff, but we're doing more work. I'm going to skip that one. Very, very important. We talked about the command center. It used to be dispatch, but it served just one department. We needed a centralized facility that would receive and disseminate information to everybody equally. So it wasn't partisan. It wasn't, I take care of operations and the maintenance department or somebody else, has to deal with their own issues. So this was critical. SAP. 2010, critical in getting operations, when I say operations, I mean all of our departments, to be united and self-sufficient and prepared for what was about to come in the Clean Water Program. A really important thing, and again, I'm sorry just to belabor this, but again, prior to 2010, the dispatchers just picked up the phone, called in Tony Panaleo and said, Tony, you got to come in for a sewer collapse. Now, in 2010, we have staff that have the same qualifications as the people in the field, so that first response, instead of calling in crews, waiting an hour for somebody to show up, now we have staff at the command center that can actually go out and can actually shut down a water main if they have to. They do it all the time. We're not calling in a crew, or we saying to the crew, we shut it down, take your time to come in. But it allows us to not be calling in crews when we don't need them to be called in. This is an important component to the study. The study recommended we should expand our lines of business, which would include recreation and it would include forestry. And, we've had this discussion a number of times in Water Bureau. So let's just look at what we proposed. This is the problem with making decisions based on staff. So we had staff in 2002 that really had no place to land because the CEO had left. So they created, as part of the study, the recommendation to expand recreation. Well, was that the right thing for the MDC to do, or was that just a way to deal with staffing that you had that you didn't have any place for them to land? So here's what happened by expanding recreation. We had 2 bicycle accidents, multiple $1-million claims. Our overtime, when I got here in 2006, the overtime for patrol was $650,000. 10 staff, $650,000. And our revenue stream for recreation was $70,000. So you can see, this doesn't make any business sense, right? We had a drowning at Lake Madonna. And so we realized that there's another way to deal with this. Let's use our patrol to do real patrol work. We had 16 at one point up in Barkhamsted. They never came down to Hartford. People didn't even know they existed. And so we started to use our professional Chief Martin with his credentials to make us all safe, not just the watershed, but make our active shooter policies, make sure our employees are safe at work, And we started using technology, like everyone, right? 298 cameras. The cameras are available to the patrol officers in their vehicles and at the command center. So doing more with less. One of the reports, one of the changes that we made that was not part of the study, the CAO at the time, meaning the position, not the person, but the CAO, they were in charge of IT, finance, HR, engineering, and operations was under the COO. And the problem with that was, and it happens today, and I'll call Kelly and Chris out, chiefs fight with each other. That's their job. Their job is to advocate for their departments. But when one chief is in charge of HR and finance, there was a clear understanding amongst the staff, and I lived it, that there's not a fairness issue there. You know, it's like I'm in charge of HR or I'm in charge of finance. So what was happening was they didn't want to spend money. Don't spend any money. So what do? We don't spend any money, but now maintenance, operations, their backlog is growing. They don't even have the ability to perform and do their jobs, and yet engineering was dismantled, and there was no way for engineering to support and design and build projects that would help and reduce the workload of operations. I use one example. It's my first claim to fame here at the MDC, which is Claremont Street. I'm out at Claremont Street, and I don't know where you were, Tony, but Dave Hartley was the supervisor of sewers. And I was out there with the crews, and they said to me, this is the 13th sewer collapse on Claremont. And the street is only, it can't be any more than 3 football fields long. And I said to my staff, why aren't you just replacing the whole sewer? Well, we can't. Why? Well, because engineering won't let us. But we had an emergency sewer repair contract. And I said, well, why don't we just use that? And they said, well, I guess we could if you say it's okay. So here I am, the COO. I'm undermining the engineering department because they're not doing their job. And so that's why the position of the chief operating officer should be in charge of operations and engineering to prioritize the work for the district. Because otherwise we're fighting each other. We've got so much money to spend, we've got so much staff that we can allocate toward it, and if we're all fighting for the same resources, our towns are the one that lose. Customer service. This was a recommendation. I didn't like the way that they proposed it. They were basically, again, robbing Peter to pay Paul. They were pulling lots of people from different departments and dumping them into the customer service department. But the only way I felt that we could correct operations was for the customer service department to be united at the hip with the command center. And that's what we did in 2011. We've already talked about the spacers. We've talked about this a lot, but again, this is more about, our customer service department getting the blame. It's like DMV, when you hate the state of Connecticut because of what happened at DMV. Our customer service department took the brunt of all of our inefficiencies. But as we'd said, you had 40,000 estimated bills. We're giving spacers out like candy with no record of them. There was 2,500 homes that we identified between 2006 and 2008 that had no meter. There was no meter in the home. People were getting free water. So the RF project was implemented, an initial one in 2004, and the concept was good. The problem, the execution was terrible. In 2004, the RF program said to the contractors, you have to install 60% of the RFs, and then you can move on to the next town. Well, guess what happened? They do 60%, they get the low-hanging fruit, they move to the next town, then all of these meters in another town or the town that they left never got replaced. So we developed, and really in 2008, and we just finished in 2015, we replaced all of the meters, all of the RFs at the MDC, and now we're actually engaging in a fixed network system, which will be read by antennas and cellular. So we won't need any meter readers at all at the MDC. And that was contemplated in 2015 when we did the multitasking job descriptions. So again, 2015, the board, appoints myself as a CEO, which I appreciate. I did not replace, John Zinzarella was a CFO, but I did not replace myself, the COO, or the CAO. I felt obligated to grow from within, give employees an opportunity to grow. I also wanted to grow. I was not in charge of finance before, or I was not in charge of HR before. So I wanted to grow as a CEO, and I felt the best way to do that was to be close to the work. So it wasn't until 2018 that we actually replaced myself with Chris Levesque, and we hired Kelly Shane as a CAO. And this just kind of summarizes that. The HR, in my opinion, must report to the CEO. For the same reason engineering should not report to the CAO. Why? Because you've got multiple people fighting for human resource. And if you've got one department, one silo, one chief in charge of HR, like what happened in the past, you will wind up with fairness of who gets positions, positions to the budget cycle. So I strongly believe HR needs to report to the CEO. IT, in 2015, the IT department, we had not filled the director since 2011. The IT department reported to the CFO. We were spending $750,000 because SAP had crashed in 2012, and there was really no leadership at that CFO role. So I had taken over IT, and we had just a couple of other things here with IT. IT was a little bit of a mess. We had no backup generators. We had no UPS system. The report says we had a full backup server at 125 Max Monroe. That's not true. So we really, there were two servers in crates upstairs in 2015 worth $2 million that were already obsolete. And so I immediately took over control of IT. We hired a new director, Bob Schwarm. Thank God I got Bob Schwarm. And I had, years ago, back in the day, I had, 2000, I was the project manager to build the Do-It Center across the river, the state computer system and server system. And we moved them from Capitol Ave over to East Hartford, and we used IBM to do that. So we brought in IBM, and we had a full backup a data center in Springfield and a brand new facility upstairs within 18 months. $1.4 million we spent, and this is an uncomfortable part of the presentation because it's not so much about the BWG report, but it's history. It's what we had to go through, and it is it is public, it is real, but it was really difficult for us to move forward with lots of things associated with either things that we wanted to do or things that were identified in the report, and it was associated with, the CFO. So we, with all the things that I had just mentioned, we had a lot of turnover in finance over the years. The CFO was with us for about 12 years. We had multiple people leave the organization, and I had the threat from the director of finance, which was just below the chief position, had threatened to leave. I convinced him to stay, and then finally one day he came into my office and said, "I'm leaving." And at that point, I knew I had to do something. Obviously, we met with the commissioners to make them understand what's going on. I brought in Cone Resnick, who you've listened to and talked to, and they've done a great job for us helping us rebuild the finance department. But this was really important because they were here to really help me transition a new director of finance. But what they found was Commissioner Hoffman has been saying for years is this lack of project controls, lack of internal controls, lack of financial controls. And we found $37 million worth of unspent bond funds from a 2017-2018 bond issuance, which was a major problem. And all of a sudden we're
Through you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Patel.
Yes, sir. Yes, Commissioner. Commissioner?
What he describes is obviously not good, and obviously a lot of improvements have been made. My question is, were there operational procedure for each activity and responsibility centers operational procedures? Did they exist then? Do they exist now? What is the status?
Commissioner, could we go through and come back for questions? I think this is a rather lengthy process, so that let's let Scott make his presentation.
I'm rushing, I'm sorry.
And we will take up questions after, hopefully as limited as possible, because there's going to be a significant amount of this as we go
How
forward.
long do you think this will go on?
Well, he's working at it.
Separate meeting.
He committed 20 minutes 2.5 hours ago. No, he's doing a good job. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm sorry. So I apologize for this. It's tough to take 132 pages and to summarize it.
Right.
And you're on 23 right
I'm
now.
almost there. I'm on page 23. So again, lack of procedures, policies, and everything that we knew, right? We were seeing, Commissioner Hoffman said every year, for 3 years in a row, what are we doing? Why aren't we fixing this, right? Why aren't we fixing this? So, long and short of it was, through a lot of work with Cone Resnick, we spent almost $2 million with Cone Resnick, helping us rebuild the financial department from the ground up. New procedures and policies approved by this board, checklist from every department, Treasury, Comptroller, and Budget. That monthly report is reviewed by myself, our CFO, Bob Barron, and his staff, and Kelly Shane, and make sure that we are doing our job, right? But we spent $2 million. Cone Resnick helped us rebuild the department, not just on a policy basis, but there was a lot of people that were in the department that weren't valued. There's a lot of people that I was told, now I gotta wait for that person to retire. I gotta wait for that person to retire. Cone Resnick came in and told me the complete opposite. I said, I want to know everybody in that department, and I want to know their capabilities. And the people that were shunned in a way are now managers in the department. So Cone Resnick said something to me, and I've said this before. Kelly was very adamant to hire Bob Barron, and Cone Resnick said, if you hire Bob, you won't need us anymore. So we spent $39,000 in 2022. So we have rebuilt the entire finance department, and it took us 2 years and $2 million to do it. I'm going to skip this, I'm sorry, I'm going to skip this one. This is our data center, right? So 18 months, SAP crashed in 2012, nothing happens. 2015, I have IT report directly to me, we hire Bob Schwarm. Bob. And Bob is godsend, so don't hold it against me, Bob, when you get an offer from somebody else. But this is our data center. I mean, this is what it looked like. I mean, it was a closet. And we built this. By 2018, we had brand new backed up systems, and they've been updated continuously since. The one thing I learned in the IT world, which is, it's a weird world, is the servers don't go bad. It's just that it only takes 3 or 4 years for the hackers to figure out how to hack them. So they have to change. That's why you have to continuously update your system. And MDC was not doing that. When I first got here, in 2006, we had, I'm sorry, it was probably 2011 because I was in charge of customer service at the time, and it wasn't funny anymore. And I said, we had our bills didn't go out. And I said, why didn't the bills go out? And the answer was, because IT ran out of envelopes. That's the state of the state, right? So, full recommendations, I'm just reiterating, this report doesn't even contemplate business transformation. It suggests it, but it doesn't have a map as to what you do and how you do it. MDC spent 4 years rebuilding our business mapping. We took 75, we call them end-to-ends processes, so whether it's a billing issue or a spacer issue, and we analyzed them to death with crews of people. We had 32 people from the MDC. There's probably 150 people at the MDC that had some part in say in upgrading the business transformation. We make mistakes when we talk about SAP. SAP is software. It's just software. So the business transformation was the hard part. Of the 20 million, probably 5 million was the software. The 15 million was actually building the transformation. So we spent 4 years in doing that, from 2016 to 2020. Sorry, I want to get to HR. We talked about this. 438 staff. We wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for the unions joining with us in developing multitasking job descriptions. We wouldn't be at 438. We couldn't be. The union had multiple jobs. There was, I know I got a slide here, but we've talked about this in the past, the number of claims. One thing we did with HR was our director was retiring, so the solution was, well, let's hire a new director, right? And now we got to train that new director to do these things that the director was doing for 30 years. No. What we did was we outsourced pension administration. We outsourced FMLA and workers' comp. And we have to date, our claims are going down over time, and our savings and medical costs associated with workers' comp our savings is going up. This slide, I'm just going to use the state of Connecticut as an example. Now, this is where the board is really important, right? We talk about succession planning. It's I don't know what it means. It's buzzword, right? But reality is important when you talk about succession planning. We were talking since 2015 that we are going to lose 50% of our workforce. We talked about it at every meeting. And the concern was, how are we going to do all this work with all of our people leaving? Well, a little trick. The trick was, make sure we have enough vacancies in the budget, which the board supported, and allowed us to hire people, meanwhile waiting for someone to retire, which allows us to provide succession planning and training. Just look at these numbers. Since 2015, the number of employees hired was 151. the number of employees retired was 196. But look what happened to the state of Connecticut in 2022. They just said, if everybody doesn't leave by such and such a date, you're going to get penalized on your pension. So everybody left. And as most of you may know, I get texts on my phone, I get emails. They're looking for any and all engineers, professional engineers. They don't have enough people because they didn't plan for it. They didn't have any succession. We did. It wasn't an accident. It was a plan of making sure we had enough vacancies so we could bring in young people and they would work along the side of our retirees rather than let the person retire and then start the process to hire somebody to replace them. Union negotiations, again, financially, 2015, 2018, we didn't focus on union rules. We focused on saving the MDC money without affecting and hurting our employee. We created, the report says there were 300 job descriptions with 700 employees. That did include CRA, but there were only a few job descriptions there. We now have 150 job descriptions with 438, but we negotiated long-term contracts. We went from the original 5% defined benefit plan to 7% contribution, then we went to 7.5%. And we also, big one was in 2018, we negotiated with the unions that spouses would no longer be carried, people that were hired after 2018, their spouses would not get OPEB retirement benefits. It saved the MDC $45 million. Now, that's over 20 years, but it's still, we didn't hurt anyone. Most of the families today, there's 2 people in the workforce. The logic was, why should MDC pay for everyone else's retirement, and we don't want to affect our employee. Revenues, I didn't, there's a lot in there. I didn't put them up here. I'm going to skip over that. Engineering and planning, this is really important. Like what happened with Chuck in 2005, the Clean Water Project was imposed on him, on us, and we had nothing to do but react to it. We had to do it. We are still in that. We still have billions of dollars of work to do. It'll be in perpetuity. The integrated plan is exactly that. We were averaging $118 million a year in the Clean Water Project. We're averaging $70 to $90 million a year on CIP. That's forever. So MDC engineering and operations will be busy forever. That's important because we cannot get distracted from our responsibility to do core business, right? We haven't even talked about, we've been planning a water master plan since 2016. We have, Commissioner Payne just asked me about this. The West Hartford filter is the slowest sand filter basin in the country. It's 22 concrete vaults filled with sand, and it's just like a sand filter in your pool. Water flows in, drains through the sand, and some of the best water in the country. But they started building them in 1850. So we're planning, and it's got to come to obviously to Water Bureau and then to the full board. We're planning to start to execute that master plan. That's $700 million. We got to worry about the water rate, the clean water surcharge. There's a lot for us to worry about. So my concern is making sure that staff, the district board, stays focused on our core mission. This is just another example of doing more with less. 2000 here, blue is CIP. The Clean Water Project didn't really start until 2008. So CIP was here. Here's where we are now, right? So this is the height of the Clean Water Project with the tunnel, and here we are now. But this is the difference. There were 50 employees hired because engineering, we lost the capabilities of engineering, although the report says engineering is in great shape. But this is where we are now, with less people. We're doing more. Again, accelerated water mains, finding ways to be more aggressive in installing our infrastructure. The more infrastructure we install, the less operational maintenance and overtime we have to pay. I've said this before, about $40 million is about $2 million in debt service a year. So if you don't do $40 million worth of capital investment, you're going to spend $2 million anyways. So why not spend the $40 million? And that's how the integrated plan was developed. That's how we sold it to the towns. You've got to spend this money or you're going to pay for it in emergency debt service or in operational expenses. So this is, I mean, this is real, right? This is real. I mean, you're talking 10 miles. This is what the engineering department did in 2000. Sorry, I'm rushing here. This is the best part of the presentation. I got to sit down for this because I can't read that and I need my notes. So we talk about succession planning, right? Buzzword, in my opinion. It's a buzzword. The board dictates succession planning. Why? You got to fund the positions, right? If you don't have assistant manager positions, assistant superintendent positions, crew leader positions, if you don't have these positions and you don't have the job descriptions to promote these people into it, and you don't hire people that are qualified to move up through the ranks, you'll never have succession. So as I like to do, I'm going to go, what page is that, Gary?
You're 43, I think.
43, I love 43.
44.
44, okay. So, I'm going to give an example of real succession. And this is what the board has done. This is what management has done by developing positions, developing budgets that would support. So, I got this big thing here because I can't read that. The first succession was obvious, right? Chuck Sheehan, the board supported my appointment as a CEO. I had 9 years' experience in the department, running operations, and that was a great thing for me and my family, and hopefully the board feels the same way. Chris Levesque, I'm going to go in order because I got this. Chris, can you stand up? Most people know Chris. I got this little report here. I found this in the files. Lisa remembers this. This was a succession planning document that I did in 2006, and Chris Levesque, he helped me write it. And we presented it to, I think it was the Water Bureau or something, but we were talking about succession planning in 2006. So Chris has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 promotions at the MDC, starting as an intern engineer. That's succession. Kelly Shane, 2014, we hire her as the director of FARS expert for the MDC, director of procurement, and 2019, we promote her to the CAO. Susan Negrelli, I don't think Susan's here, right? Susan, project engineer. She was one of those people that left upstairs because there was no leadership there. So everyone went to the operational departments. Project engineer, assistant manager, director of engineering. Dave Ruddy. Where's Dave? Dave is our director of operation. You going to sit down? Dave,
Can't see
2000, I don't know how he fits in that car. 1994, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 promotions at the MDC. Thank you, Dave. Tony. Hey, Tom. Tony, the entry-level job at the district, which still is, we call it UM1 now, but it was a sewer maintainer or a pipe joiner. Tony starts as the pipe joiner in 1989. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2022, he's the superintendent of that succession. We used to always, because we weren't bringing in quality people, we had to hire managers and directors and superintendents from the outside. When I first got here, there were pipe joiners, entry-level jobs, They were 50 years old, didn't have a CDL, and they were stagnating the organization because they couldn't move up in the system. So we couldn't bring new people in. John Fleming, just back from vacation. John came in a little high. He came in as a compressor truck operator, but that's still like second level of entry level jobs. And 1987, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He's the manager of operations. When I got here in 2006, HR would not allow us to have, it's in the report, it's in the BWG report, we were not allowed to allow superintendents, 1026 people, to be on the interviews for lower level supervisory jobs. So for a kid, how old were you in 87, Tone? 18. And John, how old were you? 18. To come in at the bottom and be manager and superintendent at the MDC, that's succession planning. Carrie Blardo. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12. No, I'm kidding. 6, right? Clerk. She came in as a clerk. 95. I want to ask you how old you are. She's the assistant to myself, the CEO. I came in 2006 and I said, who's the best secretary at the MDC? And they said, Carrie Blardo, Carrie Blardo, Carrie Blardo. And I said, okay, posted a job and I hired Carrie Blardo. And then I created an enemy called Tommy Raffa, because it was his secretary, and he was mad at me forever. Lisa Remsen. Hi, Lisa. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Accountant. Now manager of budget, right? Ken Haynes. Customer service rep, right? No, everybody's sitting down on me. Customer service rep, she's the manager of customer service. Sally did just retire, but she again came in as a very entry-level engineer and retired as the manager of H&S. Is Olga here? Oh, Olga. Olga, HR generalist, and then it becomes the manager of HR. Dinah Fay? No. Dinah Fay, again, this is another example of Kelly and Bob supporting staff that most people said, yeah, I'm not sure that person can do this job. But with training and leadership, Diana is now the manager of Treasury, and I think you've met her during the finance. So I got more, if you'd like.
We're going to hear more.
Okay.
Believe me, in the next
yes,
month.
and we will. There's a lot more here, but I just wanted to give you a flavor of. Just because there was a report in 2003 doesn't mean it was a good report. I'm not suggesting it wasn't. I'm just saying that we're just trying to explain, here's what it said, and here's what we think about it, but here's what we did. All the things that we're presenting in our presentation are measurable, right? They're actual, it's actual data, it's actual metrics. We can prove to you that this is real. And that's what I tried to do. I appreciate the opportunity to give me 45 minutes to do it. Sorry. I'm sorry. She got a time clock. So really, I really appreciate this. Like I said, the staff behind you, every one of them had an input in this. In the full report is 132 pages. We will present that by department, so that way you'll see and hear from the people that run the department and the staff, and they can talk about the recommendations and what they did and how they did it. And I think it'd be very helpful for the district.
Are you through?
Thank you.
I am.
Oh,
Sorry.
That wasn't bad. I thought it would be worse. But it was. I think what's happened here, he's put into perspective the last 20 years and where we are and we've gone. The biggest part of what we ran into was the Clean Water Project.
Yes.
And I think Scott's right. The biggest next problem we're going to run into, well, obviously integrated plan we have, but is the whole question of drinking water and where we go between West Hartford and Bloomfield. And that's a $700 to $750 million
problem staring us in the face. So I think as we get into this, and it's not going to be 1, 2, or 3, you're going to go through 3, 5, 7 meetings to really understand what those prospective problems will be, what we did, and we'll go from there. So, and this is, Scott asked this, 3 months ago, 2 months ago, you put this together?
Yes.
And I think it's a great starting part. It's a great historical perspective of what we did, a lot of the problems that we had. And before Chuck Sheehan, the chief CEO, was what, a year and a half?
You had 2 CEOs in less than 2 years.
2 years, right. It was difficult, and the whole issue of the data processing, Bob, was a real nightmare.
Yes.
In terms of where we ended with SAP and the conceptual issues we had. So there's an awful lot in here in terms of, what really happened. And I think Scott has put it in just a small dose of where it's at. And we will now proceed on with those issues. Okay. I think we're going to have to talk about where we refer this. It probably makes sense that we refer it to just a general presentation system, and you come up with something.
We will, yes.
And we start to introduce this as soon as we possibly can, because this sets the groundwork for a whole lot of things we're going to do.
We'll shoot for the end of December to start these meetings. There'll be public meetings, so we'll work with John and Chris to identify those special meetings. And like you said, I think, we've got really 8 departments that you really should hear from and understand what they do. A lot of commissioners have had tours of the wastewater treatment plant and some of the water treatment plants. It's a tremendous organization, and the staff that run it are, I believe that the people behind you are the best in the industry. And I'll put our people against anybody at any business in Hartford or across the country. We are very, very lucky to have the people behind it.
Okay. I think just for Commissioner Patel, does that satisfy you, Commissioner, relative to how we're going to move forward on this process? And there's going to be 1,000 questions that are going to be asked, and we can get response to them. Commissioner? Okay. I guess it's resolved the issue. Okay. Item number 13, consideration and potential action regarding potential violation of bylaw B2K by Commissioner Taylor.
Mr. Chairman, can I be recognized for the purpose of a motion?
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, I move that this action or referral or whatever be dismissed, and I'd like to give some reasons why I think it should be, if I can get a second for the purposes of argument.
Second.
Thank you.
Could you, let's get the motion so it's properly before us. John, you want to work with the motion?
I'd say the motion is to dismiss the action.
Okay.
I just want
to get the language properly stated as a resolution. Okay. For the floor, you have the floor.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, in the we received, all commissioners received a interoffice.
Is it on?
Yeah, it's on.
Okay.
You
got to get closer,
okay.
but it's.
Mr. Chairman, all commissioners received an interoffice memorandum from the Office of District Counsel regarding the alleged violation of bylaw B2K. The date on that says November 21st, 2022. So in the memorandum, I believe District Counsel presents a number of issues. One is the background for this, and it's, you can all read, I don't have to read that for you, but in the second paragraph, council says that the reason for the dual resolutions, because there were two resolutions, one went to the Ethics Review Board, and one was in front of the audits investigation, and is now in front of us. The other came before us as well. But he said the reason for dual resolutions is that bylaw B2K is not part of Chapter 6 Code of Ethics, and the Ethics Advisory Board only has jurisdiction over matters implicating the Chapter 6 Code of Ethics, not bylaw B2K. And I wouldn't argue with District Council regarding that, but I would say, as a rhetorical question, I'm not asking anybody in particular this question, why isn't it? It prescribes the duties or activities or behavior of commissioners and sets out regulatory issues or a code of behavior for commissioners with respect to their interaction with the district. So I don't know why it's not part of the code. I think it should be. I acknowledge that it's not, because District Council says it's not. But District Board, under District Board consideration, it says that the report was recommended a finding that a code of ethics violation occurred, but that no discipline or censure against Commissioner Taylor be imposed. And later in the analysis of the complaint, it says that it's been pointed out that no active contract existed between the district and Sandler and Mara PC, specifically at the time of Taylor's communications, but that there was an active contract with unpaid invoices, including in 2021 when an active contract actually existed. So our council goes on to say that there's been some discussion about whether B2K applies only to the contract with consultants or contractors of the chief executive officer, as opposed to consultants or contracts of the district. In our opinion, that meaning the council's, this limited application of the bylaw is not supportable. The title of the bylaw is Commissioner Interaction with MDC Staff. It says B2K, Commissioner Interactions with District Staff, Consultants and Contractors. That's what the actual bylaw says. And the title of the bylaw is Commissioner Interaction with MDC Staff. The qualifying word district applies to category within the title. And it goes on to say that the use of the possessive its in identifying consultants, and I don't want to get into it. To me, I think that we could spend a lot of time and start sounding like Bill Clinton and defining what the definition of its is, but I don't think we need to do that. Mr. Chairman, I believe that the B2K says that in order to ensure proper adherence with existing protocols of the Board of Commissioners and to maintain awareness of issues or concerns that may arise, should any commissioner or citizen member wish to make a request of any district employee with ultimate reporting authority to the chief executive officer, including executive administration staff or any of its consultants and contractors regarding district business. Okay, my point would be that at the time the actual contract with Sandler and Mara in 2021 was not with under the ultimate reporting authority to the chief executive officer, but to the district council. Mr. Chairman, our charter in section 2-15 basically says that there shall be an attorney chosen by the district board who shall be counsel to the district and whose duties and compensation shall be fixed by a bylaw. It goes on to say that the district council of said district shall hold office during the pleasure of the board. The board may also provide by ordinance or otherwise for the appointment of counsel of such assistance as the board shall approve. And I believe that that means that the board can either hire itself or give the council the authority to hire other counsel. And under Section 2-8, District Board Organization, and I would ask if anybody questions whether or not the veracity of what I'm reading, they could ask the district clerk, and he can tell you whether it's he can verify whether it's a true recounting of it. The District Board of the Metropolitan District is authorized to appoint from time to time one or more deputies to the council, to the managers of bureaus, and to other officers or agents of the district. So it specifically calls out that the council can have other counsel appointed either by a district board or by himself. And it goes on, I would like to enter into the record, Mr. Chairman, that there's a definition for professional services, and it does not include legal services. Under Section G6A, General, with the exception of those contracts for professional services of an architectural or engineering nature awarded pursuant to Sections G6G, H, G, and E, all contracts for professional services in excess of the amount set forth in the Charter shall be awarded pursuant to the process set forth herein. For the purposes of this chapter, G6, professional services, this is a definition of professional services. Professional services shall include engineering, architectural, environmental services, management studies and advice, project management, construction management, automation, and computer systems analysis and design. You'll note that it doesn't mention legal services. Mr. Chairman, under Section G8E, Best Value Selection, it gives the CEO the authority to conduct interviews and to hire consultants. And it says that the district would be best served by the procurement of construction management services and all other professional services except legal. Contract services as well as materials, equipment, supplies, collectively the services and supplies through a best value selection process, as Scott described at the last meeting of the Board of Finance. So legal is accepted specifically. I would submit that the contract of which a council spoke of that either was or wasn't enforced, but was enforced in 2021, it was a contract with the council's office and was for legal services, not consultant services. And legal services are very specifically called out, and I believe that the district board would maintain for itself, it wouldn't have intended B2K to cover that because the board has jurisdiction over the district council. And I don't think we would ever give up that jurisdiction unless we had a specific reason to, and I don't believe there is one. And in addition to that, Mr. Chairman, if anyone wonders whether or not these contracts are actually held as I've described, some by the CEO on behalf of the district and some by district council on behalf of the district board, I would offer this document, which all commissioners received on August 12th of 2021. And it is a document that lists, and I believe the district clerk has this document and can make it available to you again. We all got it back then. Is that correct, John? You did, the email message that this document was attached to said that all commissioners received this. Yes. So it says MDC Consulting and Outside Services, and it says CAPEX and OPEX by department. If somebody wants to know what those acronyms stand for, I guess it's capital projects and operating funds, capital funds, operating funds, or where the actual contracts, where the funds for these contracts are taken from. So Under CAPEX and OPEX by department, and this is a year-to-date spending as of June 30th of 2021. I'll list some of the things that are on there. So program management consultant, clean water project, which is CDM Smith. And as of June 30th, 2021, we had spent $1.8 million on CDM Smith. If you look down through other engineering design services, inspection services, energy-related services, finance, information technology, human resources, facilities, water pollution, and then you'll find the district board. So these are contracts that are hired, where we've hired through CAPEX and OPEX funding, which would come under I believe, the CEO. We've hired for the district board lobbyists. We have Squire Patton Boggs, Gaffney Bennett, Strategic Outreach Solutions, SJB Strategies, LLC. We also have, under this category, the legal department, where I believe that the CEO can ask for assistance through the legal department for other activities that he needs to perform on his end of accomplishing his work for the district. And so these are listed as lobbyists, debt service bonding, engineering design services, escrow services, and water. So I'm not sure why they're in legal, but none of those seem to be for legal counsel. They seem to be for consulting services, what you might call consulting services. So later in this document, there's a separate page, and it says the MDC Consulting and Outside Services, CAPEX and OPEX by department, and it goes on to list, engineering department, finance, information technology, legal counsel. These are summaries of what I just read to you before. There is an additional page that's entitled the MDC Consulting and Outside Services Legal by Department, year-to-date spending as of 6/30/2021. So under this legal department, these are contracts that are entered into for legal services by the district council. Various legal matters, Sandler and Mara, PC, the law offices of William J. Sweeney, Jr., Robinson and Cole, LLP, Hinckley, Allen and Snyder, LLP, Sorokin Law Firm, LLC, Ford and Palakis, LLP, Capali and Hill, LLC, Day Pitney, LLP, Natali and Wolinitz, LLC, Jepson, Rowthorne, and those are listed under various legal matters. There are others listed for collections and for a sewer customer service fee study, and that was the Raftelis study. Also legal matters with the incinerator, it was Pillsbury, Winthrop, Shaw. So, Mr. Chairman, in my first point, I believe that this contract did not come under the ultimate authority of the CEO. Secondly, the board has already heard or received the decision of the Ethics Advisory Board regarding Commissioner Taylor. We've heard what their deliberations produced, and I believe what they said was that there was they found a technical violation of the ethics code, but that they recommended no action be taken against Commissioner Taylor. So this board was asked to ratify that, and we did. And I know that Commissioner Taylor had comments about it, and I myself had said I disagreed with the finding, but that, I respect the process, and I believe, and I told Commissioner Wolf that I respect the process that they went through, that the Ethics Advisory Board, he's the chair, went through, and I certainly respect that the commissioners associated with that did their job, and I don't have any complaints against procedural matters that they went through, and I believe that Commissioner Taylor said the same. So this board then acted on that and ratified that. I'm not sure exactly what you call it, but we certainly, we accepted the report and supported it. So, Mr. Chairman, we've already taken action on the actual acts that Commissioner Taylor has voluntarily has said that he participated in. And we've already said that we will take no action against Commissioner Taylor. So I'm not sure that that if we heard this, which I think it's not applicable because of what I said earlier about the contract not being subject to the ultimate authority of the CEO, but what would we find? Would we reverse our earlier action where we said that we take no action against Commissioner Taylor? We haven't done, nothing else has been added to that. And so with those actions and with those comments, Mr. Chairman, I submit that the board could dismiss this action based on the fact that the complaint before us is not applicable based on what I offered earlier, that it's not properly, it wasn't in the purview of the CEO, but of the district council, and that the district council, that B2K does not refer to district council, and in fact couldn't take away the board's own authority to deal directly with district council and hire other counsel. And I submit that to you, Mr. Chairman, and would ask for consideration by the board on the motion.
Further discussion? Commissioner?
Yes, I have a concern that, this almost looks like it's double jeopardy if it were a regular court proceeding where we've already taken, a decision on something, and then we go back and then we do the same thing all over again, to the individual in question. And as I see it, and looking again at all of the documentation that was put forth, that I still don't see how we say that that was an intervention with a consultant under the purview of the chief executive officer, when in fact they should come under the corporation council's authority, as stated so well and eloquently by Commissioner Salemi. So again, that's why I'm supporting the dismissal of this, because I just think this is, trying to do something that we've already taken action on, and that I think it reaffirms the definition of the responsibilities of this commission, the commissioners, with the corporation, our corporation council.
Further discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Van Dyke.
Thank you very much. Just a couple questions, if I could, Mr. Chair, Jackie Mandyke, through you to our district council, if I could.
Fine.
District Council Stone, I think we all received within the last few days a memo from Scott Jellison speaking about challenges that have occurred with the specific commissioner that we're talking about prior to the Ethics Advisory Board. I'm wondering if you could just answer a few questions. Was the Ethics Advisory Board, when they had their deliberations, were they aware of either the challenges that were mentioned in this memo with PPI and the contract? This is a separate contract for those of you who might not have seen this in your email yet. Were they aware of this when they were making their deliberations?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, Chris Stone, District Council, my understanding is that they were not aware of that.
Thank you. And if I could also, were they aware of the issues that are also mentioned in this memo in regards to said commissioner as far as interference within the human resource process that's mentioned in the memo as well?
And not to my knowledge, and regarding any of the specifics on that.
And thanks, Judy. I'm glad I have that now.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I don't know who's speaking or how they're speaking at the...
Can we please either leave the room or shut the device off that's running? Have we done that? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And I would also, if I can, again, my last question, Mr. Chair, at this time, District Council Stone, if you could explain, after listening to Commissioner Salemi, if you have any differing of opinion regarding his interpretation that he has just presented for his reasonings to go ahead and dismiss the proceedings or the discussion about a B2K violation.
Sure, if I may, Mr. Chairman, through you, Chris Stone, District Council. First of all, you've all received the interoffice memorandum that Commissioner Salemi refers to, dated November 21st, 2022. It provides the detail on how the Office of District Council arrived at its opinion as to the applicability of B2K. We stand by that opinion. However, consultants or contractors may be procured, which is some of the references, or most of the references from Commissioner Salemi through the general ordinances of the MDC. Once procured, either by me, through my office, or through the procurement provisions within our ordinances, they become and act as consultants to or contractors with the MDC. This is the entity. It's not me. All my lawyers, their client is the MDC. When they're retained, their client is the MDC and their lawyers for the MDC. It's clear to me, it's clear to my staff that B2K applies here, that it is a proper section within subsection B2 of our bylaws. It is clear to us that the description of the bylaw, that the words used in the bylaw, that the punctuation used in the bylaw support our determination and our legal opinion. There's case law that's referenced in our legal opinion. With all due respect to Commissioner Salemi, I disagree with his conclusions reached. There are two, I will submit that there are two things that I can agree with Commissioner Salemi and Commissioner Torres on. Is number one, this section probably does belong, and I've talked to the chairman about this, does belong within subdivision B6 or bylaws B6 of the bylaws, but it's not there. It's a separate freestanding provision. It was this particular incident was referred by the Internal Audit Committee to the District Board. It doesn't belong with Attorney Wolf's committee in the Ethics Advisory Board because, again, the Ethics Advisory Board deals with violations of the Ethics Code under B6. So this is the proper place for this particular item. As to whether, certainly the same facts that supported a finding by the Ethics Advisory Board also are the facts that support the referral to the District Board under B2K. One can make the argument that it's the same violation that's been dealt with, but it's been dealt with under the Code of Ethics, not under this particular section. So without splitting hairs on whether it should or shouldn't, that's obviously a determination for this board to consider on that basis. But in terms of the legal opinion and the applicability of B2K, there's no question, and we went around and around with this. We did an extensive amount of research on this, both in terms of statutory construction and the words used and the placement of the words, and it is clear to us that B2K does in fact apply here.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, and certainly I disagree with the opinion of the council, and he can disagree with my opinion, but my point was not about whether the district holds these guns. My point was that it says here that any commissioner, citizen member who wishes to make a request of any district employee with ultimate reporting authority to the chief executive officer. That's the controlling part of that sentence. And the district council does not ultimately report to the chief executive officer, reports to this board, Mr. Chairman. because the position was created by this board and held for the management of this board, because the council needs to, the board has retained the council to represent it. And I believe that it only goes on to describe the people that might be reporting to the executive administrative staff or any of its consultants or contractors regarding district business. And I have presented to you, I believe with the documentation, that Sandler and Mira's contract was under legal counsel and was for legal services as described in the funding document that we all received. So, and I would ask, what is the relevance of what Commissioner Mandyke brought up about this other document? I believe it describes some activities that happened before B2K was adopted, so I don't see how it has any relevance to what we're doing here tonight, and it's not part of, it doesn't refer to any part of what we're looking at here tonight as far as a violation, so.
Attorney Stone?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Direct response.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris Stone, District Council. You can ask Commissioner Mandyke the relevance of her questions to me. I gave specific answers to specific questions, I didn't comment on the applicability of the issue or not, so, and I won't do it here. If you take B2K, and if, under Commissioner Salemi's theory, what that would mean is that all 29 of you are free to contact any lawyer within the legal department, any contractor retained by someone other than the CEO, at your will, without any consequence, without any restriction. That's what that means. That's not what 2BK was intended to do, and that's not what it says. It reads, Commissioner interactions with district staff, and based upon case law, that says district staff, district consultants, and district contractors. That's how this should be read. When you look at the third line of B2K, it refers to any commissioner or citizen member wish to make a request of any district employee. Then it goes on to describe what employees they're talking about, comma, or any of its consultants, it's meaning not a person, but a thing, i.e. the district, its consultants or contractors. It's clear to us that's the way this should be read, that's what's intended to, how it's intended to be read, and that's how it should be applied here. If you decide to move forward based upon the other grounds or not, with considering whether there's a violation here.
Thank you, Chris. Further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I would only respond to say that the reading that the council just gave, where he put district in front of each one of the items, is not the way that it doesn't say that.
Through the chair, Commissioner.
Through you, Mr. I'm not trying to be argumentative about it. I'm just saying that it says make a request of any district employee with ultimate reporting authority to the chief executive officer, including executive administration staff, which is what I believe is what the it refers to, or any of its consultants and contractors. Any of its follows the executive administrative staff. And I still don't, no one has said, I think it's preposterous to say that it means that a commissioner, any commissioner can call up any legal, I don't think anybody would suggest that. And it's been that way as long as I've been here and you've been here, Mr. Chairman, that the district council serves the district board, along with the district clerk, I might add. So they serve the district board directly. They don't go through the CEO. And I think that any staff that we would either approve or tell the district council to hire in support of legal issues here, if we had a question about it, we'd ask you and to ask the district council or ask the district council. But it doesn't suggest that you could call up any attorney. I don't know where that came from, but anyway, as I said, Mr. Chairman, I believe that it deals with anyone that reports to the chief executive officer, and district council doesn't report them.
Very, very brief, if I might, Mr. Chairman, and I will be brief. I won't belabor the point any more than I unfortunately have to. And I should have been clearer when I said anybody can contact the lawyers representing the NBC who have contracts with or serve as consultants to the NBC. What I should have said was that contact would not be violative, would not violate 2BK under your reading of the bylaw, which clearly was never intended. And finally, I guess the court in Moore versus Continental Casualty Company, a 2000 case that talked about qualifiers in front of a series of nouns. They didn't know what they were doing either. It's clear district applies to all three of the categories: employees, contractors, and consultants in that section. And that's all I'll say on it.
Further discussion?
Yes, finally.
Someone that hasn't spoken yet?
Well, how many times did you give, Mr. Chairman?
Excuse me, you're out of order.
If
What's
I could have the floor,
question?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Commissioner Mandyke, there was a question from Commissioner Salemi addressing something that Commissioner Mandyke
I understand, and
asked.
she will have the opportunity to do that.
Unbelievable.
I'm asking, is there anyone else that wants to speak? Rather than three people, is there anyone else that wishes to speak? If not, Commissioner Mandyke.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Mandyke. To answer Commissioner Salemi's point, I think that the relevance of the memo that we all received as commissioners clearly points to a sign of a pattern of behavior and not in a single incident which we reviewed under the Ethics Advisory Board and that was brought before us. I think clearly this looks at a pattern of behavior, and so that's why I bring up the memo after other commissioners had asked for information regarding this. I also believe that this is a violation of B2K, and I also believe that we have hired our district counsel to help us interpret our bylaws, charters, ordinances, and I appreciate his interpretation of this, and I would base my decisions off of his interpretations of how to look at this issue. Thank you.
Further discussion? Okay. Go ahead.
I think okay. Just trying to differentiate between what the consultants or contracts say. I think based on my reading, it looks like if something is not identified here, is included, right? I mean, we are looking at consultants or contracts. I mean, I don't know what type of legal arrangement district would engage with the legal counsel or with attorneys, right? I mean, probably they would be, in general, identified as consultants or contractors, right? Because that's, and I believe like if it's not identified specifically, that says excluding legal, I think it encompasses all type of professional, professional entities.
Mr. Chair?
Hold on.
If there's no one else, I'd like to respond to that. I did show you, Mr. Chair, and these commissioners, that the definition of consultants and contractors and everything specifically excluded legal services. So to say that it just generally includes everybody, including legal services, doesn't respond to the fact that we showed that in this case, and I believe others, that legal services are excluded. And for a good reason, Mr. Chairman, that the district council provides the district board with counsel on legal issues and whether or not a particular consultant might have the experience or expertise to provide legal services on a particular issue.
This is it. If I may, sorry. Chris Stone, District Counsel. What's been described in terms of a definition of a consultant is a method by which certain procurements are made. Once procured, whether it's by me, through GB8, or some other procurement process, they are consultants/contractors of the MDC. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you all for your indulgence.
Okay, thank you. Again, go ahead. I'm sorry, Commissioner Genta?
Through you, can I ask District Council, does B2K apply retroactively, ex post facto?
B2K was adopted in December of 2021, and the answer is no. It applies to events that occurred after its effective date.
Which?
Not to the events that led to the passage of B2K.
That's correct.
Right. Point well taken. I'm going to ask Commissioner Curry and then Commissioner Taylor. I don't know if he's...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question was very similar to Commissioner Gentile. Throughout all my career, it's all been about process. And in some cases, when I was working in labor relations as a specialist, it also included the rule of law. And I think Attorney Stone has accurately depicted the fact that 2BK was created after the violations, therefore, and we're talking on the agenda, it's violations of B2K on the agenda. And I think that's the issue really at hand. In fact, can we deal with the issue and the subject, putting all else aside, can we deal with the issue that B2K or 2BK was violated by Commissioner Taylor when it was not yet created?
Commissioner, I'm sorry, Counselor?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Commissioner Curry, for that, and Commissioner Gentile. The events, as one of the things you received when you received the memo from the Office of District Counsel were a series of transcripts of meetings. It's at those meetings that the information or the events are related to the district board, and those events occurred after the effective date of this B2K. I believe what Commissioner Gentile was referring to, or Attorney Gentile was referring to, were the events that were related in a memo from
Right.
Mr. Jellison over the past week or so, relating to events that occurred in April, May of 2021.
Which were not...
Not part of it. This alleged violation.
Further discussion? I just would like to say, given this situation has been a problem that we have had at the board for some time. It was brought to head by some of the events that we've discussed today. But we must take into consideration, it's very confusing when you look at the statute and the way the legal people have made the representation. One of the difficulties here is that commissioners that represent towns specifically have constituents, they have people that they deal with, and I think pointed out in much of the information was pointed out here, that they have a responsibility to the district and to their constituents. And I think the simplicity of the issue was that when you look at the legal opinion, to think that the person that, Commissioner Taylor, that involved himself with a constituent, or I don't want to say a constituent, someone in his town, he made it very clear, and a conversation did ensue, and there was words back and forth, but to take out a specific word in there that created the contact with the bylaw that we're dealing with, I think, was a stretch. And in my opinion, I think it's confusing to say the least. And if we're going to judge someone on what their decision was, if the bylaw itself was confusing, should be either rewritten or reinterpreted relative to certain interpretations. It was my understanding
understanding what happened in the past and has happened in several other issues, that there wasn't something that applied to the chief executive officer and who reported to him. That's the way it was written. It wasn't written to be a broad, it was to who reported ultimately to him. So I concur. I believe that the motion before us is fair and represents a reasonable solution to this issue. It's a very confusing issue relative to what we've seen in the legal opinions and interpretation of some people that would look at it. Commissioner?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, a few questions for District Council. One, why was the B2K developed? For what reason? And second question is, did the District Council advise the commissioners what they can do and what they can't do at the beginning of this problem that we had with the legal bills? Those two questions first, and I might have a follow-up. Thank you.
We ask one at a time,
Well,
so you understand both.
Yeah, I understand the first, I honestly don't understand the second, but
Okay.
that's just me. It's, my understanding is that B2K, adopted in December of 2021, was at least in part promulgated and enacted based upon some of the facts that were outlined in Mr. Jellison's memo that you received over the weekend.
Thank you.
My understanding.
Thank you. The second question,
Okay, there's two questions.
did the District Council advise the commissioners when we had this problem discussing the legal bills of what we can and what we can't do? For instance, I recall you telling us that we shouldn't be calling anybody during this whole process.
I'm sorry, yes. Thank you. You were just reminding me. But yeah, I sent out and everyone acknowledged it. I think at one of the meetings not too long ago, Commissioner Taylor acknowledged it, that you received an email from me advising each of you to, on the issue of the St. Clair Mara bills, to refrain from discussing them with anybody, whether it be any of the players or what have you. So that went out, and early, I want to say early August, late July, and it certainly predates the meetings that, my understanding at least of the dates of the meetings that Commissioner Taylor had.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions?
Yes, one last question, if I could, and through you, Mr. Chairman, this is for Commissioner Taylor. There was a memo that was given out to all the commissioners earlier, and he talked about how he called 10 or so commissioners or more because he wanted to share with them what he had learned from the meeting with Dan Mara. And so he was soliciting some commissioners to have a meeting. I was wondering if there was something really important that he wanted to share with all the commissioners, if he could share that with us now.
I don't understand what's the nature of your inquiry. The fact of the matter is that if I'm going to...
Al, would you speak into the microphone closer?
Okay. If I'm going to speak to someone, and particularly if I'm speaking to a constituent, because I was very much concerned, basically, that they understand, that Dan Mara understand, that I was talking to him as someone from Bloomfield, not from the board. I had no authority to do that. And I did not want to be taken as having had that authority. But that I basically wanted to find out from their standpoint what was going on. This is a law firm. These are people that have been in Bloomfield since I've been there. I know these people, all right? And I think that as a commissioner of the MDC, when there is a controversy, I have a right and I have an obligation, basically, to ferret out as much information as I possibly can. And if I can share that with the other commissioners, because I have no authority to make any decisions, I have to bring that to this body, and basically, they decide what they want to do. I'm one of 29, no more, no less. I wasn't cutting a deal with Sandler and Mara. I wasn't trying to cut a deal with Sandler and Mara. I made it very clear to them that if they were approached by the MDC with regard to the matter in controversy, it would be from the MDC, not me, because I had recused myself. And I realized I was walking a tightrope. I hope that satisfies your inquiry. I mean, who else am I going to share the information with?
Okay.
I'm just wondering what the content of the information that you discovered from your discussions with the attorney that you wanted to share. What was that content that you wanted to share with the district?
The content basically was this. One, they said that they had never been contacted or told that they were not rehired. Okay? They had, that's what I was told by Dan Merrow, all right? Dan Merrow, I didn't speak to Sandler, so I don't know what Sandler knew or what Sandler said or whatever else. I'm just telling you what Merrow told me, and that they tried to get in touch with the MDC, because it's my understanding that what Merrow said to me was that they were told to contact our general counsel, and efforts were made, and that no contacts were made. Now, that's what he told me.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I might, I don't believe that we should be conducting an interrogation. No, I'm sorry. And I have another thing to add.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
We're now conducting an interrogation on this. There's a motion on the floor. Go ahead, Mr. Chairman. I still reserve the right to comment on this.
He asked the question, Commissioner responded.
I understand. How far are we going to go with that, Mr. Chairman?
Further debate. I think Commissioner Payne has asked the question. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I could be recognized, Commissioner Payne also asked the council, and these are the words that he used, and if we have to play the tape back, I guess we will. But he said that, well, council, didn't you tell us what we can or can't do with regards to this? And I think the council should answer that he did not tell us what we can or can't do. He said what we should or shouldn't do, not can or can't do. He doesn't have the ability to actually direct the commission. And that's what I heard, can or can't do.
Then you should replay the tape, because you want to replay the tape, and I said, I advised my clients not to speak to about this to anyone. I advised them.
I heard you say that. I'm not challenging what you said. What Commissioner Payne said was that you said we could, what we can or can't do. That's not what you said.
Okay. Further discussion? Commissioner Manday.
Thank you very much, Chairman DeBella. Through you, I'd like to ask Mr. Myrtle a question, please, if I could. John, could you tell me, please, Commissioner Taylor's actually appointed through not the town, correct? Where's his appointment from?
I believe he's a legislative appointing.
It's a legislative appointment. And with that legislative appointment, does he represent a specific town with that representation, or is it an at-large representation?
So the legislative ones, it doesn't have to be a specific town, but they are limited that if there's one there can't be more than one from any town. So there's 4 legislative that can be at large in the district, but they can't duplicate the same town.
But it's not necessary, pardon me, Mr. Chair, if I could continue just to make sure I have a clarification on this. It's not necessarily that the appointment with those legislative ones are specifically representing the town in which they reside. They're an at-large appointment, basically, because they could be from any one of the 8 towns.
They could be, yes.
Thank you.
Further question? Okay, the motion is to, read the motion back.
Move that this action be dismissed.
Request a roll call vote, please.
Roll call vote has been requested. We have a roll call vote. Go ahead.
Adel,
Yes.
Avedisian,
No.
Lozano,
Yes.
Buell,
Yes.
Bush,
No.
Curry,
Yes.
Desai,
No.
DeBella,
Yes?
Drake,
No.
Gale,
Yes.
Gardeau, Gentile,
No.
Healy,
No.
Hoffman,
No.
Holloway, Lester,
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
Magnan,
No.
Mandyke,
No.
Payne,
No.
Patel,
Tell? He's gone. Okay, go ahead.
Salemi,
Yes.
Taylor,
I get to vote on this?
I don't.
You can vote on this?
You can vote on it.
Yes.
Point of order, can we just
Well,
get
it's
a
a-
calling from the district council about whether or not?
My understanding is he's recused himself from
Well, recusing
the
himself
matter.
as a commissioner.
That's up to, if he feels his recusal was limited to one set of facts instead of the entire issue, then he can vote, but.
Go ahead, next.
Torres,
So was that, yes, he's voting?
Yes, yeah.
Wolf,
Yes.
uh, 13 yeses, 10 nos.
Motion passes. Further, let's see, we got further business here.
The guy with the
Item 14, Committee on MDC Government Consideration and Political Action regarding ordinance revisions. The recommended action is to receive the report and adopt the resolution. Is there a motion?
Motion made.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? Is there?
The Government
There was an
Committee.
amendment in here. Yeah, let me go to the government because there was amendments to this. Go ahead.
The Government Committee voted unanimously to move this along.
Yeah, the emotion, right, the amendments were adopted by the committee,
Exactly.
and the motion before you is what it is the main motion.
Correct.
Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consideration and potential action regarding Colebrook River Lake. Who's this? Is this
That's me.
Chief Legal Counsel? Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris Stone, Legal Counsel, Deputy, or District Counsel. It's been a long night. This is a resolution, as you know, we're in litigation with the Department of Public Health regarding our exit from our storage rights within the Colebrook Reservoir from pursuant to the agreement with the Army Corps of Engineers. And we have hearings coming up in early January. And one of the issues that has been raised several times over the past year or so is a question as to why the NDC is giving up its storage space. Could it be that they're intent on selling some what otherwise Class 1 land up at the surrounding the Colebrook and Barkhamsted reservoirs? And that's not the case. And the CEO on several occasions has issued correspondence to interested parties that that's not the case. Your chairman has indicated on a number of occasions that that's not the case, but we thought that for purposes of our proceeding in early January of next year, that a statement by this board that is indeed not the case would be important and would provide some weight at that hearing. So that's the reason why this is in front of you. It's relatively simple as to what the resolution reads. I'll be more than happy to go through it with any of you, but that's what the purpose of this is.
Could you provide a resolution?
It's there.
Okay, could someone read it to, wait, reading?
It's
before
page
you.
15 of your agenda packet.
Basically making a statement that we would not sell land, so that it's everybody's understanding that what this is directing that we will not sell land. Obviously, we'd have to get permission anyway to sell
Well,
it.
it's not that quite general. It's not about just selling land. We just sold a piece of property
No, but we
not
will
too long
not
ago.
sell
We won't
rest-
sell any watershed
shed
land that
land.
is otherwise Class 1 land.
Sorry,
under
Class 1, not 2 and 3. Was it?
Well, not even 2.
Two.
It's not even 2.
Can't sell 2. Right. 1 and 2 you can't sell, 3, so we wouldn't be selling 1 and 2.
Right.
Okay. Further discussion? If not, all those in favor, please.
To move the motion.
I'm sorry, is there a motion? So moved. Further discussion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opportunity for general public comment.
I want this one.
Judy Allen, West Hartford. I just want to take the opportunity to thank all of you commissioners for your work. You spend an enormous amount of time. It's not paid, it's all volunteer, and I truly appreciate the work that you all do. Thank you.
Judy, I thought you were going to recommend that we should get paid. Okay, Commissioner comments and questions. Commissioner comments and questions? Motion to adjourn without, is there objection? Without objection, we stand adjourned.
All right. That was good.